Bridgewater Town Council. The meeting is being aired live and recorded for future broadcast. Please join me in a salute to our flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The council has not been made aware of the passing of any military veterans, but I would still ask you to please join us in a moment of silence to honor all those veterans who have passed. Thank you. The first item of business this evening is the approval of minutes from August 8th, 2023. I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Next on the agenda, we have announcements from the president. I have no announcements today. Item C, proclamations. There are no proclamations today. Item D, citizen open forum. I'd invite anyone who would like to address the council to come forward. I would ask you to please state your name and address, and please keep your remarks to 3 minutes. I am trying something new tonight. I have a little timer, so we'll see how this goes. Thank you.
Good evening, Ed Ivaldi, Boxwood Lane. As you prepare tonight to decide on several of the Charter Review Committee recommendations, I'd like to read to you a brief section of the current charter. This is a small portion of section 1-8 titled Ethical Standards. It reads as follows. Elected and appointed officers and employees are expected to recognize that they act as agents of the public, that they hold offices or positions for the benefit of the public, that the public interest is their primary concern, and that they are expected to faithfully discharge the duties of their offices or positions, regardless of personal considerations. I read this to remind you that as you discuss and vote on the suggested changes to the charter, your role as elected officials is first and foremost to represent the public in their views. Although you may personally agree or disagree with some of the recommendations, the charter calls you to first consider the views of the public and to vote accordingly. The former Charter Review Committee went to great lengths to gather and consider input from the community through public forums and citizen and employee surveys. Individually and as a body, you need to review and solicit feedback on your decisions from the public before taking a final vote. I hope that you've all done that. And if you haven't, then you've not considered the views of the public, and really you should abstain from voting. As a final note, it is important that the entire council read and be familiar with the charter so that you clearly understand your roles, especially the new members, as well as specific obligations of the council required by the charter. In addition to the town manager yearly performance review, which is just one example that had recently fallen through the cracks, I believe there may be other responsibilities that are not currently being fulfilled by the council. Perhaps a formal review and a checklist should be developed to help keep awareness of these items as a priority by the council. I'd also like to comment on the agenda item under new business, proposed ordinance FY 24-001, changing the town clerk position to appointed. I remind you that the citizens already voted once at town meeting back in 2009 to keep the position elected. Also, the citizen survey conducted in the fall of 2020 by the Charter Review Committee resulted in 77% of the respondents wanting to keep it elected, which is why the committee also recommended keeping it elected. I do believe that if you put this before the voters again, it will most likely be defeated. If, however, you do end up voting in favor of this proposal, I recommend that the appointment be done by the council and not by the town manager. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to speak? Yes.
Good evening, Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street, Bridgewater. I am here to talk about the ordinance DFY 24-001 also. As Mr. Ivaldi said, he beat me to it, but as a charter review member, we did vote to keep that in the charter as elected for the reason he said. I myself would prefer to see it elected. It was a hot topic years ago when it was put before the voters, and it was a definite no. They wanted to keep it elected. So I want you to keep that in mind. The question is whether or not we'll get qualified candidates for us to vote on. The town didn't do too bad with Ron Adams. Mary Lee's been excellent. Their experience was not what you're looking, your comments are that you're expecting that we're not going to have somebody and be able to vote them in and be educated voters on, that person has to campaign. They have to show their qualifications. So you're assuming that we're not going to have anybody anymore be what Mary Lee has been qualified for. She's done an excellent job. The only other question I have, because I was trying to read through it, are they required to be residents when you appoint them? Are they going to be an outsider? If this is to be put forward and to be an appointed position, I would hope that it would have to be qualified that they're a resident of town. A resident would have a connection to the town. They're going to have stake in the town. Somebody outside is not going to have that same feeling. And I think that's very important. I don't know if it's in there. I hope that's going to be answered. The other thing I had is, how do you get rid of somebody that you appoint? I know there's steps for somebody who's elected, that's in the charter, but where is it in this ordinance? I didn't, unless I missed it, maybe it's in there, but how do you get rid of, I'm using the word that's kind of harsh, but how do you terminate, fire, say, somebody who is appointed? What is the protocol that's going to be followed? That's important. But I really hope that this stays elected because it keeps us a resident. And I think it's wrong to assume we're not going to have any more qualified candidates beyond what we've already had. And I want them to be a resident just like if they're elected. Town council's a resident. I know the town manager doesn't have to be, but I think a town clerk needs to be a resident. And I really hope that it's elected because that's what the town people have obviously voted many times for. I thank you for your time, and hopefully I'll get answers to those questions later.
Thank you. Great. Would anybody else from the public like to speak?
Yes, Marilee Kenny Hunt speaking both as your town clerk and as a resident of Bridgewater. And I do want to talk about the same issue, so we'll just stay on track with it. I appreciate all the respect shown in the ordinance. Thank you, Councillor Perry. And I appreciate the helpfulness that the council has shown me over the years in my job as town clerk. I will confirm that I am not going to run again next year for town clerk, so you'll see me just a limited number of times more. You don't have to hold your breath about how many more times she's going to show up. I very sincerely and very deeply believe that a town clerk in Bridgewater needs to be elected and not appointed. Not only the figures that Mr. Evaldi has shared with us, but my interaction with the public tells me that. They tell me that all the time. I think whether that means that they're glad that they know they can get rid of me at the next possible chance, or that they're appreciative that I'm there and working for them and that I live among them. That's what I think makes the difference, that we live among them. And you all do too. And I know you must keep in touch with your constituents. And I would be surprised if you're hearing anything from your constituents other than what I hear from them is that they like being able to elect the town clerk. I think I wrote a few notes here so I can try to, as Ms. Sanson said, I didn't have any direct experience being town clerk when I was elected. It worked, I think, okay. The staff in the town clerk's office is incredible. Jolie Sprague Martin has been there, I think, about 25 years. Christina Nemus has been there about 8 years. They are a fantastic team, and they ran that office for 9 months when my predecessor died in office. So the fact that it can be done, absolutely, I would not wish on them the whole weight of that office again. It needs a town clerk there. There are certain things that a town clerk does in interactions with people that they don't do, but the running of the office, they can do. They can do an election, they can swear people in, they can make things happen down there that need to happen. And my deepest hope is that if we elect someone, that when we elect someone for that job, that person will pay attention to what those women have to say and have to teach. Because there's going to be a state election right after that, right after the April election, there will be the state primary. And right after that, the 2024 presidential election. Those are big things, big things. And we need someone in there who can handle that. And the way that's going to have to be handled, I'll be done in just 1 second, I'll try fast, is to let Jolie and Christine have the lead and teach the new person what to do. Town clerk's offices all have the same duties and responsibilities, but we do them in very different ways. I can tell you sometime a story about a very respected town clerk who was a city clerk, went to a town and got fired pretty much fast because he didn't do the same things the way they needed to be done in a town. We are a town and a city both, and no, there's no definition of that in the laws. We have to take each law and figure out which way we have to respond to it. So you're not going to find somebody who's going to come in and apply for the job and know how to do all that. Thanks. Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
went long.
Do we have anyone else from the public that would like to speak?
Good evening. Happy September. Welcome back from summer. Carlton Hunt, 80 Austin Street. I have a couple of concerns. One specifically regarding the town manager's performance review plan that you will be discussing tonight. I have looked at it very closely as a committee member of 2 committees in town. I think it leaves out the boards, commissions, and committees in terms of the review process. It talks about citizens, but we have over 30 committees, boards, and commissions in town. Not one word in that performance plan includes input from them. 2, when does it occur? How frequently? Who starts it? Town manager's contract says he starts it, not you guys. So we need to clarify that. 3, who conducts the review? Are you going to hire someone to do an independent 360-degree review? Or is it going to be done by our HR department, who reports through the assistant town manager to the town manager? It needs to be an independent 360 review. Thank you. I have a couple of things on the charter. I'm not going to repeat what these folks have said. I agree with it 100%. I've been a little bit close to it for the last 9 years. I agree that it needs to be a citizen of the town. If you put it forward, it needs to be someone from the town, or they have to move to the town. That's 1. 2, we're a little bit top heavy in terms of non-town residents in our offices. And I would like to see more people in Bridgewater become engaged. And the way to do that right now is to retain this as an elected town clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Thanks.
So my name's Bruce Marshall on Winter Street. I haven't really actually spoken much in front of town councils or anything like that. In fact, I'm a small business owner that's very busy 6 days a week, trying to get everything together, and then of course balance life and family and everything. One of the things as I've started to try to get involved, just to get an understanding or get my arms around what's happening with certain aspects of the town, is it's pretty hard unless you're really digging really deeply into things to understand kind of where certain priorities are. So my comments and question and just kind of thoughts around this is, how does somebody like me get information that's useful, that's not sort of buried in things that honestly I just don't have time to dig into, right? So good example is if you've driven down some of the streets recently, and I know this is an agenda item for later, kind of the roads and everything, and everybody knows about that. But just to get an understanding of sort of where things are priority wise, and even if priorities move or change, which can happen, of course, scope of work, a sinkhole opens, which we had recently, just how do we get our arms around that and just know? Because what happens is, I think you have a lot of folks who don't know, and it sort of creates this bubble. And the only place really I find, I mean, you can see how many people are here versus how many people are really eager to understand all of this and know where things lie, is like social media, not always the best place, right? Because you might have sort of an echo chamber and not really a whole lot of answers. So I guess my comments are pretty much, is there anything that can be done to sort of have some of the bigger project items, if you will, that everybody would be edified by, put in a more user-friendly fashion so we can kind of participate or be informed? Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll close citizen open forum. We'll move on to item E, appointments. We have 2 appointments this evening. The first is Disability Commission appointment for Gloria Lemieux for the term of 2023 through 2026. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. We can move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. The next item we have is Elder Affairs Commission Associate Member, Sherry Sprong. The term is 2023 through 2026. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we can move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Thank you to both Gloria and Sherry. We appreciate the participation. Moving on to item F, hearings. We have no hearings this evening. Item G, license transactions. We have no license transactions this evening. Item H, presentations. We have no presentations this evening. Item I, the town manager's report. We have quite a few topics for this evening. So I'll turn it over to the town manager to start with item A, which is the High Street Bridge closure update.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I figured this was a good opportunity, end of summer, to just sort of update you on some of the ongoing projects. If you haven't been paying attention this summer, quite understandable. High Street Bridge closure update. The bridge is in progress of being built. The abutments are being poured and formed, and there have been no reported problems as of yet. And generally all is proceeding as planned. However, I will say that it is likely that the closure will extend to the end of October at this point, mostly due to the 2-week delay at the beginning of the project, the head end of the project, just getting the right permits in place to start. So I'm expecting that, but I don't have any formal word yet. So I just don't want anybody to be surprised if it extends beyond October 15th. They are doing a good job. They're racing without doing shoddy work. They are racing to get the project in on time, but it may extend past October 15th. So that's what I have on that, but happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions for the town manager? Maybe just a quick one for me. I know school started in Bridgewater this week. And I know at the end of last year, we were trying to time it a little bit so it wouldn't impact buses. Just curious how the bus coordination is working with that.
Great question and timely. The bus traffic is generally working out fine. We did have one instance today where a bus driver who was unaware, I guess, I don't know why they were unaware, but obviously couldn't cross at High Street at that location, and that got reported to us. So making sure the superintendent understood that and making sure the bus company knows that obviously is what we did today. But other than that, one instance, everything else is fine.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to item B, the roadway plan.
As you know, and as you've heard, we did experience another sinkhole, the second sinkhole, I believe, on Flag Street, which precipitated a very quick response by our roadways department, for which I'm quite thankful. But in the immediate term, we have asked Mass DOT to allow us to eliminate heavy truck traffic on that stretch of Flag Street until we can accomplish more substantive repair. So that is our immediate goal. Obviously, we need to do the repair. And for a more broader look at Flag, a major rebuilding of that road has been engineered, I think, as the council knows, and is awaiting funding. Now, the breakdown of the total road replacement project is 7.4 million, which is not nothing. And that breaks down as 3.7 million for the road work, 1.5 million for the drainage, and 2.2 million for the water line replacement. We do have a funding source for the water line replacement and some of the drainage, but we do have to find other sources of funding for the actual road work. Obviously, since there's some urgency here, we will be doing the water line replacement and the drainage, which we don't have to do the water line replacement, but it makes much more sense and it cuts costs if you do the water line replacement and the drainage at the same time. So we will be doing that before winter because this is an urgent fix. I will tell you on a broader scale, Finance and DPW have a comprehensive road repair and rebuilding proposal, which we had wanted to put on the April 2023 ballot for a debt exclusion. And since the Bristol Plymouth new school project had to go on that ballot, we pulled the road request off. It will come back on the 2024 ballot. And between now and then, we'll be doing our best to secure alternative funding, which I'll talk about in a second. The plan, the comprehensive plan right now calls for major rebuilding of 5 roads or areas. And I think the council may remember those include Flag, Cross Street, South, Vernon, and the Deerfield Drive area. And the total cost for the work for 4 of those, the first 4 of those projects outlined in the most recent capital plan runs about $41 million. Of that 41, ARPA funding will account for 5.6 million, and that leaves us looking at just over 35 million to try to fund. And we're actively seeking federal and state infrastructure funding. Though we have to sort of thread the needle in how we meet all the criteria that those grant opportunities lay out. Just in general, and I think mostly for the benefit of the public so that there's a better understanding, other funding sources include Chapter 90. Now, Chapter 90, we get on an annual basis, and we have gotten for the last decade, in the area, a little over $700,000. That figure hasn't really budged too much. Given the year, we do see additional Chapter 90 funding on occasion, but our standard Chapter 90 funding usually comes in around $738,000. That is the money that we use to make repairs. We do crack sealing, we do overlays. We'll do a little bit of grind and replace, but it's not, that money is not designated for complete road rebuilds. And obviously 700,000 annually, it would take many years to build that up to the 41 million that we need to do the 4 roads that I mentioned. Our annual budget, our annual operating budget, given different line items, it probably is about $100,000 there worth of road repair money. And so obviously that's not a significant source of funding. And then transportation improvement plan funds from the state are project-based funds that we can apply for and do apply for. 3 of the 5 road projects that I just mentioned may qualify for TIP funding. And so we obviously will pursue that. And then finally, debt exclusion. Any debt exclusion would obviously be as little as possible after deducting other funding sources such as TIP or other special earmarks or legislation that we could secure. And the plan, as DPW and finance have laid out, would not incur all the expense at once. So if and when we get to next April and we ask for the town for a debt exclusion to cover road rebuilding, we don't go out and borrow all that money immediately. We phase it in as we do each road. So if we did Flag Street, for instance, we would tap into that for only the amount we need. The following year, we would do, say, Cross, tap into that as we need. So it would be a laddered approach to that borrowing. So in the coming months, you will see a set of informational videos that give people visuals and give people graphics concerning the roads. And included would be the street scan analysis of the surface conditions, relative cost of different components of road rebuilding, such as water sewer line replacements, drainage design and construction, and roadbed construction, because I think people need to know why it is such an expensive endeavor to rebuild a road, given those price tags. So that you can look forward to in the coming months. And I think long prior to April, probably in the November, December timeline, you'll have finance and DPW in to go over in explicit detail both the funding plan and then the rebuilding plan and how it's phased out, which is actually in the current capital plan, but likely will be adjusted depending on funding. So that's that one, but happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions? Counselor Gallagher?
That's a lot. That's a lot. And I'm glad we're finally having a beginning discussion about this. And I hope we continue to have those discussions over the next several months, because this is a big deal and this is very much needed in the community. My big concern is how much you're going to try to tap the taxpayers with. That's the big concern to me. I do believe there is a lot of money out there through federal grants or programs in addition to state. But I do think, though, if we need to, we should tap into some of our capital funds to help alleviate some of the cost of this and not put that aside and then go right after the taxpayers for more money. At least show them that some of the tax money that they have paid is going to go towards this project, and then say, okay, we'll use, X amount of money from the capital fund, but we still need X amount of money. And I'm really looking forward to see what your breakdown is. Because I don't think the appetite is there for the taxpayers to say, okay, Going to give you $40 million. We understand you might get some state aid, you might get some federal aid, but they're going to vote to pay for the whole thing if they approve it. I don't think they will. So I just think that, Flag Street is certainly a priority. It's been a priority for several years. I don't know when we took that vote on the engineering design. That was at least 2 or 3 years ago. So that is needed. So I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion with all the counselors and see what your breakdown is as to what the cost is, because we know we put a cost before the voters for a fire station, and that didn't quite come out to the cost that we thought it would be. And we're dealing with that now. These costs of $41 million today might be, $50 million a year from now. So we need to be cognizant of that as well. So I'm glad we're having the discussion. I'm looking forward to a plan, but I do think we've done a very good job putting capital monies away. We've spent a lot of money on capital needs in this town that have been needed. The roads should not be ignored as well from the capital funding. That's all I got.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Just another quick one for me. So a few meetings ago, you had shared a version of the roadway plan. And at that time, there were some projects that we were trying to kick off in the fall. I think Winter Street was one of them. And I think there were maybe another one around here. I'm just curious with sort of the issue on Flag Street with the sinkhole. Now that we're trying to accelerate that, do you expect that to have a ripple effect on some of the other projects that were already planned?
I think the short answer is no. We're pretty set. We do have an issue on Winter Street, which is unrelated. It's unrelated to, any pavement, water line, any of those issues. And that's the layout. So we have to resurvey the road. The road actually violates essentially its layout. There is certain footage for to say it's a 40-foot layout, and the existing road goes on to private property. So that is something that may delay that project, but the funding is in place for that particular project, so that this issue on Flag Street, I am not anticipating will affect progress on Winter or others for that matter.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move ahead to item C, Styles and Hart update.
Styles and Hart, I think as the council knows, the overall plan calls for parking area, better access from Broad Street, establishing trailheads, improving existing trails, making new trails, adding signage, constructing wetland crossings on trails, and creating fishing opportunities, adding benches, and creating better accessibility, handicapped accessibility within the park, or just creating a period. The draft plan was reviewed by the ad hoc committee, and I heard good. I was not at that meeting, unfortunately, but I did hear good, excuse me, good feedback. Parks and Rec will be looking at the plan at its next meeting, which I believe is on next Monday. And as soon as they get a chance to look at that and endorse it, we'll be ready to go out to bid. And I think just a reminder to the council that we've received about a little less than 500,000 in funding from the National Park Service, which will offset over $1 million of community preservation funding. So it's a big project. It's going to be a fantastic park when it's finished. So we are hoping to get that out to bid and get to work on that over the winter, and whatever has to be done in the spring so it can be ready for use next summer. So that's our aim. But I just want to give you an update on where we stand with that.
Any questions for the town manager? Okay, let's move on to item D, flags at town buildings.
Flags at town buildings. I just want to let the council know as a group that the flagpole installer, we ordered 2 new flagpoles, one for the library to replace the broken one that's in front of the library, which is, as far as I know, has been broken for at least a decade. And then install a flagpole in front of the memorial building that will take the flag that's currently there and put it on a pole. And so that work is scheduled for next week, I believe the 12th, and should be ready to actually fly flags, I would think at least a couple weeks after that. So that is in progress.
Thank you. Yeah, Christian?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mike, on that note, so who's responsible to, raise the flag, lower the flag every day in the town? So what's the protocol? Because if you have a flag in front of this building, perhaps the old townhouse should have a flag in front of them as well, in front of that building as well. There's one across the street in front of the World War Memorial Library. There's a lot of flags in such a small condensed area, which is rightly so. But who's responsible to raise them and lower them?
Actually, the flags you mentioned are lit. So when the flag is lit, there's no requirement that it come down at night. Our intent would be to light the 2 flags, the 2 new poles that are going up as well, so that we don't have to take those up and down either. But I can tell you as a routine matter, if the flag has to come down, the veterans agent has handled that, and the fire department assists in that endeavor too.
A half
So
staff protocol that would be those individuals.
usually those individuals. On occasion, it'll be me.
Any additional questions? And maybe just a clarification. So for the memorial building, there is a flagpole there. I think we've heard before that structurally, if we were to fly a flag on that, it could damage the work that was recently done. Just wanted to confirm that. That's why
Correct.
we're putting a pole in.
Yeah, we spent a lot of money recreating, repairing, I should say, the lattice work in the front of that building. The flagpole, or the pole that's currently there is anchored into that lattice work. So when the flag, when there are high winds, the flag flies rapidly and racks that lattice work. So in addition, actually, they had to remove some of the rigging material during the renovation process. And so we want to make sure that the flag that we put up there is put up in a better location and a better method. So.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on to item E, truck restrictions update.
Very quickly, I did want to let the council know we've recommissioned a broader study of the truck traffic. We did that with McMahon Engineers this summer. With that data and the data that we did collect last spring, Old Colony Planning Council has agreed to assist us in proposing some types of heavy truck limitations on several of our roads. So that work is in progress, and I just want to let folks, especially folks that have reached out to our office, know that that is in the works. It does take time, and I know that that's frustrating, but it does take time to do it right. And I think for the benefit of the public and the council, I just want to make sure that everybody understands we can't simply just unilaterally put up a sign, which I know has happened in the past. That does a lot of things, risks our Chapter 90 funding for one thing, or qualification for more Mass DOT money. But in order to place a truck restriction or any type of restriction on a road that is at all funded with any state money or federal money, we have a very specific list of criteria to go through and a very specific process to go through in order to restrict certain types of traffic. So we are in process of doing that. It does take time. And so I just ask for a little patience as we get there. So I want to, if and when we get to the point where we're restricting time, either a time of day restriction or a restriction weight limitation or whatever the case may be, we will have done it the right way so that it sticks and that we can actually enforce it. So that is what's going on. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
President,
Councilor George?
through you to the town manager, just a couple of things. One, and I understand the process in regards to state funding of roads, and we have to follow those rules. How do we determine what roads actually in Bridgewater receive state funding?
The best answer is pretty much all of them. You know, they when we get Chapter 90 funds and we use those all over town, whether we're using them to crack seal or to do an overlay, a paving overlay, or what have you, it's pretty much every road. Every road that we have is touched by state and federal money to some extent.
Okay, and the other thing, and I brought this up before, I'll bring it up again. This is from firsthand experience. We need to increase speed enforcement on those roads. I know that, we've already asked that, and I've gotten the feedback that it was very little in regards to that. I can tell you firsthand, especially on High Street, we need to have a presence on there all the time, especially during the day. We've got semis going on High Street. There's no way in God's green earth they are traveling the speed limit, especially when they're going down that hill. So I'd like to see more speed enforcement on that street as well, other streets as well. And I bring up High Street because it's around the corner from me. But I think overall, we have to do a better job at speed enforcement across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor George. Any additional questions? Okay, we'll move on to item F, downtown revitalization update.
Just a couple of reminders there, September 15th at Old Scotland Links. It's late morning. I can't remember exactly what time, but there is a session sponsored by Metro South Chamber of Commerce. So if there are any counselors interested in going to that, it's sort of a Bridgewater focus. And Bob Ruley will be there. I will be there on a panel discussion. If any counselors would like to attend and you haven't signed up yet, just simply reach out and we will make sure you get signed up. Then I just want to remind the council of September 26th revitalization kickoff at the Mitchell School. That's a public event open to all residents. And in fact, we encourage folks to show up and give us some feedback. It's two things. It's a chance for us to present downtown revitalization concept to those that have not heard of any of that yet. I know the council's heard a lot of that this past spring and summer. So, but it gives us a chance to reach out to residents and really explain downtown revitalization, what that means and what it means to them. And then also gives us an opportunity to hear back from residents what they may like about it, what they may not like about it, and allows us to make a connection that we'll continue to use to email out information or answer questions or send white papers, which we've started to do on basically a weekly basis. So so that is on the September 26th. So I certainly encourage people to show up at the Mitchell School. Again, that's in the evening. Not sure exactly what time, but that's on the website. And speaking of the revitalization website, if you are interested in signing up, or if folks out in the community listening in currently are interested in signing up for the newsletter, that they can do at the new website, which is Bridgewater MA Vision to Reality, all one word, Bridgewater MA Vision to Reality.com. Sign up for the newsletter and also keep track of how we've gotten to where we have gotten and where we hope to be going. So that's it on downtown revitalization for now.
Do we have any questions for the town manager? Councilor Gallagher?
Thank you, Mr. President. So about a week or two ago, a few of us councils attended the presentation at the university. I assume September 26th would be a similar discussion about the vision to reality with the consultants and then questions and so forth from the public. My question is after that, I mean, when are we going to see perhaps like a plan, like a concrete proposal and say, you know, I do think that the meeting at the college focused too much on Campus Plaza and not enough on the common or I call the old downtown, if you will. So, and that's what I want to see, you know, before I leave the council is a proposal to come before us to discuss, you know, are we going to make the common, you know, one way or two lanes one way or whatever, move the common to the left or to the right? I mean, what are we going to do? Do you have an idea as to when we might see some concrete plans with perhaps dollar signs attached to that as well?
Sure. There's a lot packed into
Yeah.
that. So let me, the event on the 26th is not quite like you saw at the workshop.
Okay.
It'll be a little bit of explanation in a more general sense, probably not specific to every single piece of property, you know, in the downtown. It's much more general discussion. And then after that sort of short presentation, then the plan is to set up different subject area stations so that if people are concerned about traffic patterns or pedestrian safety, there's a table to go talk to folks about that specifically. Sort of the subject matter experts will be there specifically for that. It's sort of like when we did the master plan, we set up something similar. You know, if you wanted to talk about you know, the park system, you go to over here and talk about parks. If you want to talk about housing, you go over here and talk about housing, that kind of setup. So that's on the 26th. In terms of infrastructure and you know, I say infrastructure, meaning the road pattern, so forth. I think you will see something along those lines coming up. I'd say within the next couple of months. We just had a session with OCPC today on their Route 18 corridor study, and they've actually incorporated a lot of what we would like to see in some of their study materials and some of their recommendations. So we had a meeting with them today. They're finalizing their plan, and they're going to put that out to public meeting probably within the next couple months. On the on the sort of the substance of how we get to a revitalized downtown, I think a huge piece of that is zoning. And so we have Horsley Witten engaged, an engineering firm engaged to do an overlay or a rewrite of our downtown central business district zoning. And I think that's the tool that the town uses to really spur development and the development that we want to see. You've heard Bob really talk a lot about form-based code, and form-based code is really kind of letting the use take a little bit of a second seat to what you want your downtown to look like. And so that's kind of that's a mind shift of sorts. But Horsley Witten is working on that. And I think Bob has said he wants to try to get a draft to the council before the end of the year. In terms of, and this is, I'm very happy you brought this up, because there seems to be some rumor out there that the town is going to be spending a lot of money we don't have, a lot of money we need to spend on roads, on some kind of development in the downtown. That's not what the whole point of this is. The town is not a developer. The town is not a builder unless we build roads. But the town is not the one that's going to be redeveloping these properties. The town can put in place zoning and incentives to encourage private development of these properties. And that's where our focus is and will continue.
Well, the
to be.
state's requiring us to do that.
And the state is
Exactly.
requiring, well, the
Right.
state's requiring that we create housing
Right.
around the MBTA station. So that's sort of left, it's now left to the towns. I mean, we could say, yes, we want to accommodate that housing. Here's what we want that housing to look like. We want it to be in buildings that are X feet tall, or we want it to be in buildings that are only one story, or whatever the case may be. And we do that through zoning.
Right, but the downtown, the common downtown area, does zoning need to be changed there as well? You're leading to that?
Yeah, I think there's no intention to change the common itself. We're not going to pave over the common.
Right.
It's too expensive to pave over the common anyway. But we do think that zoning can help, and I'll use this as an example. On the east side of Central Square on the Common, the old My Sister and I building and so forth. One of the things that's hampered any notion of redeveloping those properties is we've got a parking requirement. And the parking requirement wouldn't ever be able to be satisfied by 2 or 3 or 4 of those buildings, because the buildings are almost exactly on the lot lines. So if you get a developer coming in that says, hey, I would buy that building and redevelop it, but I got no place to put parking for, the commercial use or the residential use in the building. Our current zoning says, oh, well, too bad, basically.
Okay.
So those are the types of things that Horsley and Witten is looking at.
Okay, one more thing on this is that when Mr. Pastel had his proposal before us, you had a memorandum of agreement with him that if this happened, there would be X amount of money to help improve the common. Is that still a probability, or is that totally off the table now?
My recollection is that special permit that he was granted expired.
Okay.
So
So-
by definition, then the agreements.
The one thing that bugs me is the Jersey barriers. Yeah, I know they're there for public safety, and that's fine. But I just think it's time that we see some sort of proposal to,
They're
gone.
They're gone.
the Jersey barriers are all gone.
gone.
And then,
Yep.
that must have happened like
Today.
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 Oh, okay, very good. So, but no, I think that what you just told us about the common area is important, because I haven't been hearing that that's the zoning that needed to be changed to accommodate any, facelifts in the downtown, this downtown area. Everything that I've been hearing is the train, Campus Plaza, the state law that just passed it is forcing us to do something. But thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take-
Any additional questions? I think actually Council Lindy and then we'll do Council Perry after.
So through you to the town manager, just a suggestion, when the meetings are being held, they've been off, this place is all wired for television, but I know it doesn't hold a lot of the public. Just a suggestion to pass on, possibly hold one of the meetings at the BR High School in the room where the school committee meets, because it has a lot of room for the public and they televise meetings there on a regular basis. So just a suggestion to do that. They're having it at the Bridgewater Middle School, which really doesn't have great facilities over there. And I don't think you can move it now because it's already announced, but
I
another
think it's at the Mitchell.
Mitchell.
I think it's at the new Mitchell.
Oh, the
That's
new
a
Mitchell?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Just,
Now, I don't know how,
I don't know what the audio visual is over there, even though I'm on that committee. It's all new. It's all, if it's in the cafetorium, the auditorium, there's plenty of room for people. I just don't know what the wiring is. And BTV does a great job of covering stuff. But if it's multi-camera, it's better because you can show the presenters, the screens, the audience. Just a thought.
Thank you. Dr. Perry?
Yeah, just a little bit of information. So Downtown Revitalization Subcommittee has definitely just been a little bit on hold, waiting for the results of the traffic study from OCPC. So once we get a hold of that information, then the subcommittee is going to be taking that information and doing some more review of that in reference to the downtown, the common and things of that nature. So that's really the major piece that we need to see before we can kind of decide on anything else. So just a point of information.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Maybe just a final comment for me, similar to what Councilor Lindy said. I think in the last discussion that the council had or attended on this, people that were watching could hear the presenters, but couldn't hear the questions. And I think that was probably that probably hurt us because there were some great questions and people weren't able to hear the question or the answer. So even if we are at a different location, I would ask that we do find a way to at least have a traveling mic or some way to ensure that people who are watching can hear both the question and the answer. If that's possible. Thanks. Okay. I think that we have one more item, the old town hall roof.
the only reason I put that on was just to let you know that the work has been completed and they did a great job. I will give them a lot of credit, the contractor and the architect both. And we have one interesting, to me, little glitch, and that is that the Mass Historic Commission requires that we give them a plot plan and a property description, and which we did. And the property description that we gave them does not match the plot plan. And so we had to resurvey it. And so the surveyor, as I suspected he would, was having a real hard time trying to figure out how the town came into ownership. So he reached out to Bob Wood, who was very helpful. And now he's searching probate records to try to figure out how the town came into a piece of property. It's either the fire station or the town. I think it's the fire station property. So as I say, interesting to me, probably not to anybody else. So, but the project itself is finished, looks great.
Excellent. Any questions? Yeah, Councilor Gallagher.
So now that the old town hall roof is now the new townhouse roof, what's next for that building?
That we are beginning the process. Marilee reached out to BSU and was fortunate enough to get an archivist essentially donated. BSU Library offered to donate archivist time to do the initial clearing out, and she's made great progress so far. Only been over there for probably a full day, and so she will continue that effort until it gets cold. But I think by then we will have cleaned out what we need to clean out, and then the real work of like the nitty gritty archivist will begin. So the council funded that portion of that through the capital plan. So once this initial work is complete, then we'll begin the nitty gritty of archiving the records that are over there and then transitioning them out.
But that stuff is all in the basement of that old town hall or?
There are some old records still in the basement, I believe, but I think most of the records that that are actively used today are on the first level. The top level is mostly cleaned out.
So it's,
Second level.
the main level is it's a safe space though. It's safe. Just clean it out and then we'll figure out what we're gonna do inside there later.
Correct.
Whatever.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? Yeah.
Through you to the town manager. I just want to request an update on the water on the next council meeting, including magnesium, the condition of our wells, and how the process is going to raise our water limit. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKenna. Do we have any additional requests for the next agenda?
Yes. I attended the meeting at the library on the PFAS, and the gentleman that was from the Taunton River Watershed Alliance, I believe, said anytime we wanted to hear that, we could. And I noticed, we have an area on here for presentations. I don't know if it would be a good idea. I found it very educational for me, learning things that I did not know. It's comprehensive. It's a lot of stuff to absorb all at one time. But there were a lot of residents there. There were a lot of questions. Massachusetts is in better shape than other states, but there were issues. And at some point in time, maybe we could possibly have
Yeah,
that as a
I think we
presentation.
should. I think we'll add that as a future agenda item.
Okay.
And if there are additional requests for agenda items, please just forward them to me. Yep. Councilor George?
Yeah, so through you to the town manager, and I'll forward it to you as well. We had a pretty significant power outage. And you've been on the emails as well with major concerns about the lack of National Grid's tree maintenance program. So what I'd like to do is start the process of getting National Grid here to hear the concerns and, more importantly, to give us concrete schedule on what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, and where they're going to do it. Even driving down Cherry, down Walnut, I know they did some work. There's a lot more to be done. So I'd rather be able to speak to the person in charge versus us going, back and forth. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional requests for the next update? Okay, seeing none, we'll conclude the item I, Town Manager's Report. Move on to item J, discussions. I'll defer to Councilor George for discussion on the town manager review document and process.
Super. Thank you very much. So on August 3rd, myself, Councilor Robinson, and Councilor Murphy had a committee meeting. And I felt at that meeting, since Councilor Robinson and Councilor Murphy had never seen the document, that first meeting was just to kind of look at the document, the process, the document itself, so that when we came to the council, they would have an idea of what it looks like. And then more importantly, what I've asked, and I know Debbie sent it out, was we really want to get some feedback on two things. One is the actual evaluation itself. As Dr. Hunt brought up, I mean, there's areas that, we may want to add, there's areas that we may not want to add. We as a committee would rather get input from all of you, put it together, bring it forward for a final approval so that we can implement that. The other thing that I outlined was in regards to the process of the review itself. So and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's in the administrative code, but I'll give a brief overview. So if you look on the review itself, it's basically due November 9th. The first question is, why November 9th? Well, the prior town manager's contract, I believe, expired February 4th of each year. Within the contract, there is a requirement that if the town manager's contract is not going to be renewed, they get a 90-day notice. So if you did it at that point, November 9th on the prior year to the expiration, the council president who delivers the review would actually be able to deliver the review and also give the town manager notice that we would not be renewing their contract. So we've changed the contract terms. So one of the discussion points would be to potentially change the delivery date of the final review to the town manager. And there's a couple things to it. And again, this is my opinion. Council Murphy, please step in at any time. It's a couple things. One, I think it does work well to coincide with the expiration or the anniversary of the review on that 90-day window. For future councils, whoever's on there, the council president would have the ability at that time when the renewals to come up to not only deliver the review, but also give the notice of intent to renew or not renew. I think it also would kind of work a little bit better for new counselors that come on, that will give them a little bit more time. It's not a lot of time, but a little bit more time to work with the town manager to, at least their first review, have a little bit of a ground stake in it to be able to give something, because I know there were concerns, and rightly so, that, under this particular one, I don't think we're going to make this, that a new council is not going to have a lot of time to give the first review. After a year, obviously, there's more time in there as well. So one of the things that I'd like to consider, and again, I throw this out, our intent is to bring this back as a committee to talk through what you all recommend, what we have, and then to come back fairly quickly with a recommendation on the form itself, as well as the timing, is to look at doing this to the point where March 31st would be, of each year, would be the due date of the final review delivered by the council president. And that would give, if I did it right, that would give each 90-day notice, right? So kind of keep it from there, which means that on February 28th, that's when all of the reviews would be due from the council to the town council clerk, as well as HR, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So that means the timing would be roughly January 3rd, the reviews would be, the form would be sent out. So every councilor would have 30 days to submit the review. It goes to the town council clerk. It also goes, we'll say the HR. It has to be compiled because there's ratings, there's narrative and things of that nature. And then once that's compiled, it's delivered to the council president for delivery. I know there's some discussions on access to it, which I'm not the resident expert on HR law, so I would have to kind of turn to people like that. But at least we get the form reviewed as well as the process down on a go-forward basis. That makes a little bit more sense from that perspective. The other thing that came up too, and this is the tricky part, is this review is January through December. And as we all know, our fiscal year is June 30th. So do you keep it a calendar year? So basically you're reviewing on a goal, half a year, or you're going to change it to try to do it as a fiscal year review, which does have some sense to it, but also kind of makes it a little bit more difficult per se, depending on when we review it. Again, I'm just putting it out there for people to review. We could keep it the same. We can change it. We can do it whatever way the council feels is appropriate to get that done. I just want to remind people though, that the town manager is a public employee, but the town manager also has rights under employment law in Massachusetts, so that not only do we want to have a fair and equitable review, but we also have to make sure that we're doing it under the guise of employment law. Hence the reason, we look to our town attorney as well as our HR representative. I'm not saying we're doing it wrong, but I know that there are people that feel very inclined to throw things in and things of that nature, or add things. And I'm not saying we're trying to hide things, but anyone who is an employee, regardless of public or private, you do have rights under the employment law that we have to follow as well. So I know it's a little bit different on the public, but there's some things that, that we need to follow. We need to have review, and make sure that once that review is delivered, that it's a good review, it's a thorough review, but also the process and the review itself falls under those guidelines. Do you have any, I've been talking a lot. Do you have anything to add?
I think we covered it.
Okay, so that was it. I mean, I love a little bit of discussion, but what I'd like to ask is after this meeting, I'd like to schedule our next review committee meeting within the next few weeks. Probably really dive into it and then get something back in front of the council as quickly as possible. From a practical perspective, we're not going to make a November 9th deadline. So, but get this back into a flow where it's going to match up to everything that we've got going on. So that's about it.
Thank you, Counselor George. Do we have any questions, comments? Counselor
Just
Lindy?
just a thought. Good work. Is there anything that MMA could offer us in terms of the process? Not having gone to any of the seminars or anything yet as a newer counselor, I'm just wondering if they have some stuff. You're 100% right about employees having rights, and hopefully, I mean, some of it is in the contract as well.
Yeah.
But those are the experts.
That's
in
an
my
excellent
opinion.
question that I don't know the answer to, but I will approach the MMA and see what they got.
Thanks.
Yeah, Dr. Perry?
Yes. Are you looking for just some feedback, the email that you can take back to committee to go over things?
Yeah.
All right. So I
Yeah,
didn't
I
know if we
mean-
want to discuss it and.
Yeah, I think-
As a council
Correct me if I'm
or.
wrong, you sent it out about 2 weeks ago? Yeah, so you guys all have it.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect a flurry of things to come back at that point, but you all have it. Now what I'd like to do is over the next day, day or 2 or 3, send stuff back to us and then we can bring it into our meeting and get something out here as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments?
No, I'll get some notes.
Okay. Yeah, I would just echo the appreciation. I think we've heard a lot about this process. We want to make sure we do it right and we set a foundation that future councils can use too. So appreciate the deep dive on it.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes agenda item J. We will move on to item K, which is committee reports. Do we have any committee reports this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to item L, legislation for action. The first item we have is A, proposed ordinance D FY 22003. This is Bridgewater Town Charter Article 4, Town Manager Temporary Absence. And just as a reminder, we spoke about this in our last meeting as well. There was some work done over the last few years. We've heard from the public about this to make recommendations on charter changes. Those changes went to committee in a previous iteration of the council. They're coming back from committee in this one to give us the opportunity to discuss and potentially vote on them. So this is the first one. This was originally submitted by Councillor George, and I believe Councillor Gallagher. Is there anything that you'd like to add to the introduction of this?
No, just the way it reads. I mean, we did go back and forth with this and we feel as though that we have an assistant town manager that if something were to happen to the town manager, that assistant town manager should be able to step into that role. If not, there's some, is this going to a ballot or is this something we're going to approve? I'm unsure.
So I believe the process, I might defer to our town attorney.
Right.
Yeah, I believe we approve it here if we want it to move forward. It then goes to the state where somebody from the state, an elected official from the state would pick it up, could potentially change it. They voted at the state level. It then goes to the governor. The governor then could change it or approve it. Once it goes through all of that, it comes back and then goes on a ballot. And we have the kind of option of packaging it for that ballot. And then if it's approved by the residents of Bridgewater through that ballot process, it becomes a charter change.
Okay, so, all right.
That's right. If you look at the amended versions, the last line of all of them talk about that very process. So what you're actually voting on all of them, I believe it should be, I know I reviewed these some time ago, but I believe all the language, and if it hasn't been, it should be modified as such, each of them say said amendment shall only become effective and is contingent upon approval by the town council, the state legislature, and the voters of the town of Bridgewater. So though that language was put into each proposed charter change.
Those were in the prior ones too.
Just a few additional comments on this one. I was on rules and procedures when this came through, so I might just call out a couple of points from this. Okay. There were a few things, I think, at the time, we wanted to make sure that an absence was defined. So, if the town manager was out for a day, could the clause go into effect? And so you will see that there was some language change, just bringing some clarity to the length of time that the town manager would have to be absent before it's considered an absence. At the time, the Rules and Procedures Committee thought that the assistant town manager should be positioned to step in for the town manager in the event of an absence. So while the original proposed language suggested that sort of anybody could be named, that was modified by Rules and Procedures to flow first through the assistant town manager. And then there wasn't any language in the original recommendation about who could serve as interim town manager. We wanted to put in language to make sure that a sitting counselor could not serve, so that the council couldn't essentially appoint itself as the town manager. So you'll see some language there. So that's just a little bit of additional feedback on this one.
Mr. President, a point of order, if I may, just a very minor edit, but in line 1 of the order, we may care to change the spelling where it appears as town manger, just to make that minor modification.
Yeah. Do I hear a motion to amend town manger to town manager?
If a motion is required, I do make that motion.
Second.
So we have a motion. I believe it is here. I don't see that. Let's see.
Where are you seeing this, Counselor?
First
line.
First line,
Yep.
under order.
Ordered that Article 4, town manger.
I am not seeing that.
I think that's in the language that was stricken.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
actually in the final copy that was presented on our last meeting on August 8th.
I'm looking at page 18. It's not.
Yeah.
17.
I'm on page
That's it,
17.
but I don't think. Okay, well,
Okay,
We
I
can
see it.
change
Now I see it.
Oh, I see. I see. So we should.
So what is going to be sent to the state, though? The whole thing or just the highlighted areas, I guess? Oh.
Yeah, so I see. So we should confirm that we know what we're voting on. This specific one has 2 pages in our packet. The first page on 17 is the original submission. The second page, 18, is the amended version of that submission that came back from Rules and Procedures. So what we're voting on is page 18 of 36, which is the amended version that came back.
What's confusing about that, however, is the fact that the page that is not the last version has the 8/8 second reading date.
Right, I think you have to vote to amend to the most recent version, which is the highlighted version first. And then I think you have to send to advertising and then do a final vote on the modified version or amended version.
Okay, great.
I think that would be the best, safest protocol.
Great. So I think, thank you, Counselor Chase, for noticing that. So I think the first thing is, do we need to make an amendment to clarify the second reading date?
Well, so
I just want to make sure there's no confusion at
yeah,
all. on
I think
this.
what ended up happening was this got brought back to the council, right? Almost to start over, it seemed like, without a real start over.
Yeah.
So I think that's okay in terms of the readings, because I believe it was at the council at the last meeting. Am I correct?
It
So,
was, yeah.
so that's your first reading technically, I think, on this new one. You can then vote the modification. This can be the second reading. You can send to advertising and then come back and vote it. And I think we're fine.
Okay,
I think we're okay.
great. So I think maybe just to go along with that. Does it need an amendment? Because I believe we're acting on page 18 now.
And it's just-
Yeah, it depends on what you brought forward. I don't recall off the top of my head. What did you bring forward?
Last time was just the first reading.
Was it? Yeah, last time we didn't. It was just to
Right.
familiarize, and we decided we kept it at council.
Okay.
Need to vote as amended and then vote to send to advertising.
Yeah, so vote as amended as shown in here, and then
Yep.
we'll do a vote to, okay.
Yep.
So I would entertain a motion to accept or to vote this, or what am I?
I think you just
Accept the
vote to
amended
send it
version
to advertising. I think it's fine.
Okay, so first I would entertain a motion to accept as amended and described on page 18 of 36.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. We can do this with a voice vote, right? Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. I would also entertain a motion to send this to advertising.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we can move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
And I would just follow that same protocol for each one, just to be safe.
Thank you. All right, moving on to legislation for action, item B, proposed ordinance D FY 22007, Bridgewater Town Charter, Article 2, Legislative Branch Election Eligibility. This, actually, I would ask Councilors George and Gallagher if you'd like to make any opening comments. I can discuss the rules of
I don't have
procedures.
any.
I don't have any either. I think when we first brought it up, we discussed it, but that,
Okay.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, maybe if I could just introduce it and then I'll take comments from the remaining counselors. So just a few notes on this one. In rules and procedures, there was some discussion about this sort of scenario where a counselor is appointed. So one leaves or some other event happens, like a redistricting, and they serve less than a term. And we wanted to make sure that counselors who found themselves in those positions where they weren't able to serve a full term didn't have that sort of action counted against them. So we did add language to this saying that a term lasting less than 24 months as a result of re-precincting or appointment shall not be included in calculating total number of terms served by a member of the town council. So that's the only, as I say, it's sort of like real meaningful piece that came back. I would, Councilor Chase had some comments on this. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did have concerns about it. I can see that the 24-month language that you've just made reference to, does address my particular concern, and it was a concern I raised on my behalf, certainly as well. I felt that Councilor Lindy was in a similar situation where we each had been elected to serve a partial term created by means of a vacancy. And in my case, I had also been appointed for several months before I was then able to actually take papers to run for a one-year term that was upon the vacancy of created by Councilor Perry's withdrawal from the council. And I felt that the fact that, I had stepped forward, certainly as well, Councilor Lindy, and there might be others who have been in this situation and who have willingly stepped forward to serve in the role. We shouldn't be disadvantaged by that. And for that reason, I felt that the number of years that was being proposed should be considered with an exception for a limited period of time. Now, I did prepare and deliver to the councilors in writing just this evening prior to the meeting proposed language that I had intended to introduce, really to accomplish the same effect. The language I had proposed would provide that the term of a counselor shall not exceed 4 terms of service, provided, however, that any term of service of less than a 3-year duration shall not apply to such limitation. That was the basic substance of it. Frankly, I don't know if what the general consensus of the counselors may be, but I think that the language that did come out of the Rules and Procedures Committee that we had before us does suitably address the issue I had raised.
Thank you, Counselor Chase. Counselor Perry?
Yes, and again, to speak of what Mr. Chase just spoke about, I had to step down as I moved out of my original precinct to a different precinct in town. So would that qualify under this language of re-precincting? Would my situation fall under that term? Or would we need to include something to the effect of a resignation of some sort due to, a move within the town where I couldn't represent that district anymore? To that effect, I think Mr. Chase's language where that any term of service of less than 3 years duration shall not apply might help in this situation, for the fact that I left after about a year of my 3-year term. But again, this situation might happen to someone else going forward. So that would be a concern that I have.
So, Mr. President, through you, I
Yes.
still think 4 covers that.
4 covers that with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
you haven't served-
re-precincting term?
You haven't served 3 years.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, coming in midterm, leaving midterm.
Yeah.
My opinion would be
That
You
would
know,
qualify.
that would not qualify if in fact you didn't finish that term.
You're just listing reasonings, the result of re-precincting or appointment. I just didn't know if that situation would fall under re-precincting, which to my reading of it should qualify, I would think, but.
Yeah, and that was the intent of the language. I think perhaps we could add the word such as, so that it shows those as examples versus the only criteria.
The only criteria.
Yeah, the intention was, there are a variety of reasons somebody could step in and not serve a full term. And as long as it's less than 2 years.
I mean,
2/3
we
of
might
the
have a
time.
person with a health issue that might not be able to continue. There could be a variety of reasons why someone might not be able to
Yeah.
finish their term.
So,
Right, and what it doesn't do is reset the clock. In regards to the number of terms that you've served, that particular term wouldn't cover, but you wouldn't leave midterm and then go back and not start at square one. I think that's what we currently have now when it says consecutive. If you break that consecutive, you get to go all the way back. With this, if it turn, and again, my interpretation, and Mr. Rollins could pipe in, was if someone doesn't finish a full term, that term would not count towards the term limit.
4 total.
Yeah.
I think that would be fair.
yeah, and I think at the time, I think the discussion, we picked the 24-month period, just to kind of avoid the thing where you get close to the end of your term and kind of hop out, so it doesn't count. So we
Yeah.
thought, that was a material enough difference.
Just, I guess, point of clarification. You raise a really good point, and I'm not sure it's addressed. So if you're a district counselor and you move out of the district, you had to resign.
I did.
Okay. In Brockton, you can finish your term. Because there's language in their charter that allows them to do that. You can't run again because you moved out of your district, but you can finish it. You can finish your term.
I think that's in a different area of the charter. So maybe what we could do is.
Should look at that.
Yeah, take a look at that.
I think that's the language in our charter is I had to step down because I
Yeah.
was no longer in that precinct.
It
anymore.
is. It is. So I think, is there any additional discussion on this? So maybe what I would do is entertain a motion to change the language in item 4 to be a term lasting less than 24 months and remove the term as a result of precincting or appointment. So then it'll just read, a term lasting less than 24 months shall not be included in calculating the total number of terms. And then that,
I think simplifies
eliminates-
the situation.
yeah. So I would entertain a motion to make that edit.
So moved.
Second.
have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
I kind of liked your original thought about such as, I'm not sure I'm not sure it could be interpreted. I don't know what the town council.
Maybe,
I just think there could be a
About what's
variety
your
of
specific
reasons.
question relative
So-
to it. I mean, so you're either saying a term lasting less than 24 months due to the fact, right, that there was some re-precincting, or based on you being appointed, or you say nothing at all and it's just limited to the time period. I mean, it's
I
one
think
or the
that-
other.
I
There's
think it's
no-
simpler, just because again, there could be other situations that come into play, either health issues.
if we have a such as, and something comes up that doesn't meet.
That's,
those two
yeah, I
criteria.
mean, so such as is just saying these are a couple of possible examples. It's not very,
It's not a- it's not a-
strong.
It's not all
language, right?
inclusive.
It's not, you're not cutting it down to anything. You're saying, when you use the word such as, you're just giving examples, right? So in this case, it's as a result of. But if it said as a result of things like, or such as, then really you're just giving examples. It's not held to just those things, right? So it's almost in essence the same thing as saying nothing at all,
Yeah.
right?
And I think our intention with these edits is to try to make them bulletproof, right? So it's very
All-inclusive.
clear what we're doing.
So it's either you say what it says now is as the result of re-precincting or appointment,
Right. Only
right?
those two.
Only those two things. That's what you're saying now.
Right.
If you remove that, it could be anything.
And I do agree, someone might have a health issue and serves, a term, and we would want them to be able to come back. So I think right now we have a motion on the table to amend the language to be a term lasting less than 24 months shall not be included in calculating the total, et cetera. We have a second. Any additional discussion on that?
Sounds good.
Okay, I would move to a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
We have one nay and 7 ayes. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item C, proposed ordinance sorry, I have to do a
Wait, we have to
motion.
vote.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
we
sorry.
have
We got to vote on the language.
I would entertain a motion to approve as amend, or to move, to accept the amendment.
Yep.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, we can move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Now we'll do a motion. I would entertain a motion to refer to advertising.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right, item C, proposed ordinance D FY 22-008, Bridgewater Town Charter Article 2, Legislative Branch Annual Stipend. Would Counselor George or Gallagher care to introduce?
Actually, this is Council Gallagher.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
just Counselor
um,
Gallagher. Sorry, thank you.
I'd like to make an amendment to this, first of all, but this really would just reestablish a stipend for the town councils in the town of Bridgewater. I do think that we all deserve a little bit of a stipend for the work that we do for the town. I think it's overdue. We're the only council form of government that does not receive any stipend. And that's the whole purpose of this, is to reintroduce a stipend to the citizens of Bridgewater. They obviously have the right to vote on this up or down for this. So I'd like to make an amendment if I could, and change the order to on sentence 2.
We actually do have an amended
We
version.
do have an
that came
amended
back
version.
on the
Came
back of
back
it.
on the
Just so
back.
everybody recognizes,
Turn to
on
the highlight.
page 23 is the original that went to committee. On page 24 is the amended version that came back from committee.
Okay.
We can take a moment to read that if you.
I don't see the amount in here.
Doesn't have an amount.
Sorry, there's no amount unless.
There's no amount.
No, it's, this is the change, so I can maybe give a little bit of a an introduction. So at the time, there was a lot of discussion about how this amount could change over time with inflation, with a variety of other factors, over a 10-year period when this gets changed, a lot can change. And so there was some concern. So the first attempt was to put language in there that had some sort of prescription on how this should change over time, either following some sort of industry metric, et cetera. We then talked about other options and eventually realized that it's very difficult to have the actual amount be in the charter. And so we did find evidence, I actually think it was Braintree, where the charter, instead of setting the actual amount, set the process for changing the amount. So in this example, the amended language says that by charter, the town council has the ability to set a stipend, but it must go through this process. And the process includes ultimately going in front of the voters. So it essentially allows us to remove the state condition from this specific value because we expect the value to change over time with inflation, and allows us to set it within the town of Bridgewater, but only with voter approval. So that's essentially the amended language that you see there. So the reason there's no amount here is because if we passed this, it essentially says, hey, we're going to allow this amount to be set in the administrative code with voter approval at an election. That's the change. So it's a pretty significant change from just putting an amount in front of the voters again.
The amendment is really the way it is now.
No, now there is no, it has to go, it's in the charter. It says that we do not earn a stipend.
And this doesn't give us a stipend either.
So this is essentially saying we're going to remove that condition from the charter. So the charter won't say anything about the stipend anymore. It'll essentially say that there is the charter says to set an amount. Actually, we can even read it because there might be some confusion.
Right.
So the salary, the members of the town council shall receive such salary for their services as may from time to time be set by ordinance and approved by a majority of the qualified voters of the town of Bridgewater.
So you could propose 5,000, 2/3 of the council would have to say yes, it would have to go to the voters, and the majority, it's a majority, right?
It is a majority.
Simple majority of the voters have to approve it.
Yeah. And then it says an ordinance setting or modifying the salary of town councilors shall first require a 2/3 majority vote by the council, and second, a majority vote by the voters as a ballot measure at the next regular town election following the.
But this would have to pass first.
This is the language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then
So if, say this goes to the ballot in April and this passes, then we would have, someone would have to come back and
With
put
an
a
ordinance.
dollar sign in there. And then it would have to go back to the voters again.
correct.
Right.
So the first cycle is longer.
I don't see why we can't just put an amount before the voters now in April. We set the,
Or a starting amount.
for a starting amount. You
I
said
see.
such, the members of the town council shall receive such salary. Well, what is the such salary?
I think the choice is,
There should be a such. And the such should be,
so you could amend this to say the first one shall be,
Well, that's
Thousand.
my point. I
I'd
would
like to
make. It's
see a
we could
starting
Start off with just a starting salary point. The rest of your language gives you the ability to modify it down the line based on an updated ordinance. Again, because right now, the way it's written, we wouldn't be able to set an initial amount for another year. That won't take effect for another year after the election. So I think this
I'll be
one
long
should
gone.
probably, I think this probably should initially list a starting point for the initial vote to get the ball rolling, and then edits on it, I think would be covered by the rest of your. language.
I think if I may, I think I agree that a certain base level salary should be stipulated, because I think that when the voters see this proposal before them, with no indication whatsoever of what the amount would be,
Correct.
I think there's going to be some serious apprehension on their part.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas
Say
if we have
want
some,
10,000, 20,000, could be crazy numbers.
So I'll propose an amendment. It's just a simple one. Is to amend one and say the members of the town council shall receive $5,000 salary for their services as may from time to time be set by ordinance and approved by majority of the voters qualified in the town of Bridgeport for any increases to that amount.
I would just say to edit that,
But I'd like
Council
to-
Gallagher, an initial salary.
An initial,
Certain initial salary of a certain, or whatever amount.
but I also think the council president should get at least $7,500 as being council president. So I think members of the council should get $5,000 and the council president, whoever that is during that year, should get $7,500. That's just my proposal.
So that the,
Members of the town council shall receive $5,000 for an initial annual stipend. The council president shall receive $7,500. Any changes to this amount shall be set by ordinance and approved by a majority of the voters of the town of Bridgewater.
Can I ask why you went from 3,000 to 5,000?
Yeah. Why? Well, three is, I don't know where the three ever came from.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of. Well, that's what Braintree gets is 5,000. That's what-
I'm
But no, I
gonna,
mean, I just
So
think
that's where the
3,000 is,
I'm gonna second his motion.
so the amendment, I just want to make sure I have it. So the amendment is, number one, we say the members of the town council shall receive $5,000 for their services, salary for their services,
Initial salary, if you would.
shall receive initial,
Stipend, if you want to use the word stipend.
If that's your intention, you could say a base in the
base.
amount of,
a base, does stipend versus salary matter?
Well, there's nothing to add to the
I think it's
base.
considered more of a stipend than a salary.
there isn't initially, if you use that as
Yeah,
clause
a
one.
base, okay.
You say a
Initial.
base salary in the amount of X.
Okay.
Then you do clause two
I like
about
base.
how that's modified.
is the word base suggestive of additional
Yeah. it's-
increments?
It could be, it could also be suggestive of a lower increment, right? It's your base, it's where you start. It doesn't mean it's where you end.
Oh, I'm trying to put a voter's read into it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could read that way. That's why you want to be careful with the verbiage. Obviously, I'm deferring to you guys. It's your legislation. I get what your intent is. You guys are saying this is kind of where we start, right?
Yeah.
And
I
there
see
can be
it's-
changes by us, but the changes we make have to be approved by a majority of you.
Correct.
So however you phrase that, the semantics matter.
Yeah.
Because they matter at the ballot. But you guys are the wordsmiths in that regard, so.
Yeah, I think along those lines, this is something that has the potential to be misunderstood. And so I feel like it is probably worth the time for us to make sure that we have language that can travel with context.
It's just that the members of the town council shall receive
An initial stipend.
a $5,000 stipend for their services. The council president shall receive a stipend of $7,500. This may from time to time be adjusted by ordinance and approved by a majority of the voters of the town of Bridgewater. It's very simple.
Is your intention an annual stipend?
Annual.
We have to say that.
I'd say annual.
Yes,
It said
I would.
I would make sure to say
salaries
annual.
annual stipend of 5,000 for the counselors and 7,500 for the council president on an annual basis stipend.
Then the rest of the language, this may from time to time
Yep,
be adjusted by ordinance.
By ordinance, any adjustments need to be approved by the voters of the town of Bridgewater.
Mr. President, would it be helpful to, on this particular issue, because I agree with Counselor Chase, there could be a lot of misunderstanding with the electorate. Would it be helpful to take this one piece and send it back to Rules and Procedures rather, in order to really wordsmith it properly and make sure that there's no room for misunderstanding?
I like that idea. Maybe can we do a vote on the motion
You'll
first?
see if it passes first
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
might
let's
not
see.
pass.
So first, we have a motion on the table to amend the language. We have a second of that motion. So we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Before you
Oh,
ask for
sorry.
that, Mr. President, just read what you have one more time, just so we all have an understanding of what we're looking at.
The members of the town council shall receive an annual stipend of $5,000. The town council president shall receive an annual stipend of $7,500. This may from time to time be adjusted by ordinance and approved by a majority of the qualified voters of the town of Bridgewater.
Good starting point, yeah.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
My only hesitation on it
Here we go.
is you're putting that into the charter, right? So this is going to be part of the charter now. So as part of the charter, I worry about changing verbiage in the charter by ordinance, by subsequent ordinance that doesn't go up to the State House and become, right, approved as a charter change. So let's say, for example, that the charter says your base salary is $5,000, but now you have verbiage that says that can change. Well, isn't that a charter change? Because you're changing the verbiage in the charter. It gets a little,
Well, that's
right?
why,
And I think that's why you had it written the way you did at the outset, where it was flexible, because then any changes to it don't change the charter as it reads. Can you do it? Yeah, probably. I worry a little bit about what the legislature says when it gets up there. We can defer to them on it, right? If they approve it, they approve it. But I do worry a little bit about that because it's a little strange where you're saying in the charter, hey, listen, you're going to get $5,000, right? But that can change from time to time. So in reality, the charter can actually change without doing a charter change.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I do.
So it's really cute. It's like very close semantically, but I do worry a little bit about that. What you
So-
say, because I like to look at our charter as this is what it says. There's no flexibility here, but you can legislate all this other stuff, right? And you're talking about legislating the salaries without doing an actual change to the charter.
Yeah.
But
Right.
these are all ordinances that we're recommending. All these are ordinances we're recommending changes to the charter. The Charter Review Committee might review this in the next review and say, okay, let's go to 5,500 or an
Oh,
8,000.
yeah, no, I'm not saying these things can't be done or can't change. I'm saying this may get to the legislature and counsel for the they will look at this. And if they look at this and go, well, you're allowing for a charter change in this charter change without coming back for a charter change.
Yeah.
So they may do that. They may not. And if they don't, then it's okay. Hasn't been vetoed by the governor. It's been signed off by the legislature. So be it. But do you see what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
little bit of a
So,
nuance there.
I think what I'd like to do, if we're comfortable with it, is vote on the language as amended and then send it back to Rules and Procedures to incorporate
Appropriate language, yeah.
appropriate language and consider the discussion here to make sure that
Yeah.
we're covering the legal basis, because I think there's enough confusion on this and enough possibility of misunderstanding that it requires a little more. effort.
This was a long time ago, obviously, when this came.
Yeah.
But I do remember this discussion somewhat vividly about that's why the flexibility was built into that.
Yeah.
It always wanted to be deferential to the voters because you wanted the voters to
Right.
decide the amount, which makes perfect sense. But it was always a little bit iffy about that, putting that amount in. And I think that's one of the reasons. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just a quick question
Dr.
through you
Quinn?
to the town attorney. If we put the language though, that it would be the initial amount, wouldn't that infer that potentially it could be edited down the line? We're just establishing an initial amount.
It may be, or maybe not. That's my point.
Yeah.
So because by putting it in as this is what our charter says, right? It's like saying the term limit is 3 years. That's in our charter.
Mhm.
Right.
Correct.
If you had a clause under it that said Yeah, but without a charter change and by ordinance, the voters can change that to 5 years. That becomes problematic for interpretation of your charter, right? Because then you could have an ordinance that contradicts the plain language of the charter.
I agree with you.
And so while it may work in concert, while the intent might be accurate, while it may come from you all and the voters, it isn't something that then is approved by the legislature, which is required for us to change our charter, right? So it's a little, it's very close.
So you're thinking by not listing any particular number in there and going through the process as we listed, by
Yeah.
going through ordinance to set the number and then going to a
It
vote.
just may be cleaner for making changes down the line. Because I'm getting the read from you all that you all think there should be some flexibility. Maybe market conditions change. In 20 years from now, that may not be enough, right? You want flexibility to change it, maybe without doing an entire charter change every time. That's all. So
My only
I'll leave it
concern
to you
is-
guys. It's
My
up to
only
you.
concern is timeframe, because based on
Yeah.
the way this is written, this could take 2 years to probably get in place.
It could. I mean, it could take 2 years to get in place, and then the first counselor that, once it's in place, will have to suggest a salary, and that will have to be voted. I think you could probably put in language that says there's some amount of salary that has to be given, and that is left to the voters. The problem then becomes as well, I mean, we can go down this rabbit hole for a long time, but then it's like, well, what if they keep saying no every time?
Correct.
Then where do we
That's
go,
my next
right?
question.
Yeah, so we have to think it through, and you have to have enough kind of caveats built into this where there's a somehow a guarantee of this salary, but the amount of that salary has to be set in some fashion, almost where if the voters vote it down, like language that says if the voter, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if the voters keep voting it down, then the base salary is always set at X. Right? So instead of the other way it's written where you say it's always set at X.
So it'll be
right?
no less than X dollars. or
Exactly.
something.
So there are other ways to do
To write
this,
that language.
but you have to be very specific in how you do it. That's all.
Okay. I think it's a good discussion. I do think it's important enough that it requires some additional work. So let's vote first on the motion to accept the amended language. We have a motion and a second. We have had the discussion. We can move to a vote. All those in favor of amending the language as described, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay,
Two nays.
that was a nay.
That's three.
Three nays. Three nays.
They want to do a roll call.
All right, let's do a roll call on this one.
Again, this is the overall language or the amended one that we just
the
discussed?
amendment, just
Just the
inserting
initial
that.
amendment, all right.
And then just for awareness, the next motion that I'll entertain will be to send this back to rules and procedures. for
Okay.
action. Can we have a roll call vote on amending the language as described?
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
No.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. George,
No.
Mr. Murphy,
No.
and Mr. Chase.
Yes.
So it's 5-3.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to refer this to rules and procedures.
So
Committee.
moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
Well, this could come back, taking that out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You could come back, take it out. It'll come back as something totally different. And I hope it does, right?
You could go through the same circle.
Two
again.
no's,
Yeah,
two of the no's are on the committee. So,
But I think, I think it's good. We'll have an option to take us another.
Go back to square one. Another year. The wheels.
Counselor George?
Mr. President, through you. I'm just going to make the statement that I will not be supporting this in any form whatsoever. I mean, I understand the intent, but I do not believe that giving stipends to counselors is going to increase counselors running. I don't think we need to spend this money on the council per se. I know everyone's got different financial, situations, but I've always been kind of proud of the fact that when we're accused of being in it for the money, it really educates people that we don't get compensated. We've had problems in the past prior to the council in regards to compensation and benefits that really put not only the town in a financial hole, but I would say in a leadership hole as well. So whatever form it comes back, I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? I think maybe just building on that, I also have concerns with compensation for counselors for many of the same reasons. I do know there are some scenarios where employers also can have challenges with somebody in a paid position. So although I support getting this in front of the voters, as it was written, I was also not in support of it. But any additional discussion? Okay, so we've got a motion on the table to refer this to Rules and Procedures. We have a second. Why don't we do a roll call vote for this one too?
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. George,
No.
no. Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
and Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
7 to 1.
Okay, moving on to item D, proposed ordinance D FY 22-009, Bridgewater Town Charter, Article 2, Legislative Branch Recall Provision. This was also originally sponsored by
This,
Councilor.
yeah, this just establishes the mechanism in which an elected official may be recalled in the town of Bridgewater, signature requirements, purpose, timing of all that. So it's just nothing that's in our charter right now.
And then at the time,
I don't know if it's been amended. I don't know if it's been
yeah,
amended.
it has, but I believe it was a minor amendment. The Rules and Procedures looked at it, also looked at similar provisions in other towns, seemed to be aligned. The only thing I think we clarified is other charters showed exactly how it should appear on the ballot. And ours had some, maybe didn't have the level of clarity. So the only change we made was the order and the wording of how it would appear on the ballot. You can see that on page 30 in the highlighted text.
A point of order, if I may, Mr. President.
Please, yeah.
I have a number of concerns, but initially, I think there's some ambiguity. And certainly, I'm not entirely clear as to whether the intention of what came out of the Rules and Procedures Committee was that the application of this ordinance would apply to Article 3 of our charter, all elected officials, or just Article 2 of our charter, which would just be town council members. It's kind of confusing because it's gone back and forth on that particular point. And I just want to know, before we get deeper in the discussion, as to exactly which article of the charter this would apply to. If it's to all elected officials, it would be to town council members, to the town clerk, and to the members of the library board of trustees. Obviously not to the school committee because that's a district-wide matter. Or if it is instead applicable only to elected officials under Article 2, which we all comprise.
I'm glad you highlighted that. I think I misspoke and said the only change was the ordering on the ballot. On page 29, and I'm remembering it now that you're mentioning this, we did make a change to the original proposed language. The original proposal said Article 2 Legislative Branch. We crossed out 2 Legislative Branch and changed it to Article 3 Elected Officials Recall Provision. And similarly changed the section to list, to include this in section 3.3 Elected Official Recall Provision. So I believe the intention was all elected officials.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, and I'm happy to hear that. I do have would like to raise a motion to amend Firstly, a very minor issue really, but the language of the ordinance as proposed does refer to city throughout its text. And of course, we would need that to be to revert to the word town as the charter currently reads. More importantly, I would like to strike the word grounds as it appears in line 3 of paragraph B and substitute therefore the word offenses. And to give a little more clarification as to the reasoning for this, I've given to the counselors this evening before the meeting the text of my comments, which I'm reading right now. What I would like to propose is that we add the language.
Sorry, Mr. President, point of order. If we're going to review these, I think they have to be done individually. So instead of going through all three, I think we have to
Handle each
do
as a
each as an
motion.
amendment.
That's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep.
All right. Well, I've made the motion therefore that the word city be struck and the word town be replaced.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second to replace the word city with town. Any discussion? I would just say, I think we've heard from the community on this before. I think although we have the structure of a city, we, like many other, communities, have decided to refer to ourselves as a town. So I like the idea of it saying town versus city. Any additional discussion? Okay, we can move to a voice vote. All those in favor of changing city to town, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The motion passes.
And if I could, Mr. President, I'd further like to amend the proposed language by striking the word grounds as it appears in line 3 of paragraph B and substitute therefore the word offenses. And as-
Second. I'm just seconding.
Oh, thank you. All right. The motion and a second. Okay.
Just one clarification on the amended version that came back from Rules and Procedures. It's actually on line 4, paragraph B, line 4. It's about the 7th or 8th word in there. And so the motion is to replace the word grounds with offenses. So then this would say an affidavit containing the name of the elected official whose recall is sought and a statement of the grounds upon which the petition is based will change to a statement of the offenses upon which the petition is based.
Correct. Yes.
Thanks. We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we can move to voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
Thank you. And my final suggested motion for amendment of the proposed language is to adopt the language that I presented before the counselors this evening. And I'm able to read that. It is the full text of one portion of a provision in the bylaws of the town of Hanson, Mass, which has also addressed this issue of recall. And here's what I would propose that this additional language be would say. An allegation of offenses which shall constitute a basis for recall of an elected official under this section shall include, but not be limited to, the following transgressions. And now begins the full text from the town of Hanson's bylaws, which have been approved by the state legislature. 1, conviction of a felony or conviction of the following misdemeanors as defined by Massachusetts general laws: domestic violence, driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, the illegal manufacture, distribution, or dispensing of controlled substances, assault or criminal harassment while presently in office, or 2, admission to facts while presently in office sufficient to be convicted of a felony or sufficient to be convicted of the following misdemeanors as defined in Massachusetts general laws: domestic violence, driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, the illegal manufacture, distribution, or dispensing of controlled substances, assault or criminal harassment, or 3, violation of the conflict of interest laws, Mass General Laws, Chapter 268A, while presently in office, as determined by the State Ethics Commission or the Attorney General. 4, attendance at less than 50% of the posted public meetings of the board or office of which the official was an elected member or to which he or she has been elected or appointed as part of his or her elected position during the previous 12 months. 6, and I think there's a numbering error there. It seems to me it should be 5, but it reads 6, lack of fitness, insobriety while performing official functions, involuntary commitment to a mental health facility, being placed under guardianship or conservatorship by a probate court, or 6, corruption, conviction of a felony involving moral turpitude, conviction of bribery or extortion, or 7, violation of law, regulation, bylaw, or other abdication of the applicable requirements for the elected position. And the final sentence of their statute reads, the elected officials vote on a matter other than in connection with a conflict of interest violation referenced above shall not be grounds for a recall petition. Again, I've provided to the counselors in writing the citation as to the adoption of this law. It was the legislature approved it on October 15th of 2019. It was codified into the bylaws of Hanson, Mass on October 29th, 2019. And by discussion with the town clerk of Hanson, just within the past week or two, I've confirmed that this is in fact the law as currently in force and effect in the town of Hanson. Now, comments I would like to make is that the recall of an elected official is appropriate in instances where improper behavior is evidenced. For example, in the case of a conviction of a criminal offense, confirmed breach of ethical standards, or any action contrary to the sworn oath subscribed by the official upon taking office. Recall petitions are occasionally viewed as a method to penalize an elected official for a policy, vote, or proposal to which some citizens may object. Elections, however, are the proper mechanism for voters to express objection to matters of policy. Town councilors are elected with the power to make decisions, certain of which may be unpopular with some citizens. By substitution of the word offenses in place of the word grounds, a distinction becomes clear that recall is intended to address instances of ethical breaches, legal infractions, or other acts which may bring disfavor or disparagement upon the town council. You may wonder why I suspect the issue of policy may motivate some to consider support for recall. In 2017, a previous charter review committee, not the committee that has most recently reported their findings to us, recommended substantially the same proposal. In fact, the language I believe was verbatim, or very nearly so. The proposal was never adopted since the entire charter amendment, which was advanced to the ballot, was defeated at the town election. But the 2017 proposal would have inserted this ordinance under Article 3 of our charter that is applicable to all elected officials in the town: town council, board of library trustees, and the town clerk. The most recent charter review committee in 2021, however, proposed inserting this ordinance under Article 2 of the charter. That is the legislative branch, which is the town council, and no others. The library trustees and town clerk do not formulate policy for the town. They discharge specific functions prescribed by statute. Only the town council legislates policy decisions for the town. In 2021, the town council's Rules and Procedures Committee, not the committee as currently constituted, to their credit, revised the proposed ordinance to again pertain to all elected town officials, as I believe it should. After all, any town official could engage in unethical, illegal, or inappropriate behavior. Why should the town council be solely held accountable for such transgressions? As many town residents are aware from past experience, recall elections are costly as to both the balloting itself and the potential for litigation to which the town may become party. This was fully evident in 2011 in Bridgewater, when a year-long process unfolded, resulting in recall of 2 town councilors following contentious debate and litigation. The town council should adopt these amendments to provide clarity of purpose and minimize risk of needless expense and divisive acrimony. That is all I have, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a friendly amendment.
Uh,
After parens 12 months, change 6 to 5. Just keep the numbers accurate, right? Is that what you said, Fred? Lack of
is-
fitness should be 5?
That is correct. I
Okay,
believe,
so I'd like
yes.
to propose as a friendly amendment.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
I would
We don't have-
second that.
We don't have to vote on that as a friendly, right?
Okay, actually,
We have a motion. I don't know that we have a second yet, though, for discussion.
Second.
Second for discussion. Okay. Additional discussion?
Dennis.
I'm sorry. Council Gallagher and then Council Murphy.
So I think there's a lot in here. I really do. And I think some of it is justified. But I think to initiate a recall petition against an official for not attending meetings is not really a criminal thing. It's more of a decision that that person makes that they don't want to come to a meeting. The other one in here that, which we just changed, that was 6 is now 5, lack of fitness. I don't know what that means. In sobriety while performing official functions, involuntary commitment to a mental health facility. I mean, I think that from time to time, members of our society have problems that they can't control. And the fact that they want to try to serve on a committee and have perhaps issues, they need to be supported when they recognize those types of illnesses, not demonized by saying, we're going to throw you out of office because you have to go to a mental facility. I think that's wrong. I don't think the town of Hanson is any model for any town to follow when it comes to recalls, because they seem to do it quite often. So, I mean, I think there's some things, I can't support this because there's too much in here.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy, did you have comments?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest the same as regards to the mental health facility. So thank you, Councilor Gallagher. But I also would like to make a friendly suggestion. And I believe the review committee was also doing this to remove he, she references throughout, if possible.
I would second that.
And what are we replacing them with? I just want to make sure I get it specific.
I'd say it was they, but I'm not sure what the language was.
Yeah.
In other parts.
I think another pronoun can be substituted.
Gender neutral
Um,
pronoun. Okay, thank you.
To which they had been elected. That's-
Yep, we'll use that. Thank you, Councilor Murphy.
So
Councilor Lindy?
I also echo about the mental health. I think, you know, if someone was experiencing a severe mental health issue, they probably would voluntarily maybe not come to a meeting, or maybe it's therapy for them to come to a meeting and they can function in other ways. I do disagree though on the 50%. I'm going to use the example of my class. If you show up 50% of the time, a 50 is an F. And if you get elected and you pledge to be at meetings because you asked to be elected, you should be at the meetings unless there's a really substantial reason why, especially if we're going to consider stipends. Okay, Brockton just went from 15,000 to 30 for that salary. I'm not suggesting that, by the way, but there are people that think you shouldn't be paid if you don't show up to meetings. So I think it's in order the way Council Chase has it in here.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments?
Mr. President.
Yeah.
Through you, I do understand the sensitivity around mental health. I think with the word involuntary, that's usually of an extreme nature. I would think that in that particular part, there could be the ability to recall a counselor if they're involuntary, if they're under mental health supervision and they're able to participate in things of that nature. I don't think it covers that. I think involuntarily is usually an extreme measure from there, and it probably be within that person's best interest not to be on the council as well. But that's just my personal opinion.
And if I may, just so the councilors understand that this language I've taken from the town of Hanson, the reason that I adopted it, why I am proposing to adopt it, is that It's already been tested. It's passed the legislature, and for several years, it's been in effect in the town of Hanson. So in other words, I didn't modify anything about what they've done. We're free to do that, of course. All right. And to some extent, I think we're entertaining that notion here now. But for example, on the 50% of, missed meetings, that was in their statute. So I just took it as a whole.
What I might just say is, I think, from where the direction this is going, and I think, again, this is a lot. If we do vote on this to at least potentially send this back to a Rules and Procedures meeting to be re-reviewed afterward, and then bring back similar to another ordinance, I think we probably would be going in a good direction in this particular situation.
Thank you. Any additional thoughts? So maybe just a few thoughts of mine. I do like the idea of putting boundaries on this, specifically the last sentence, right? Where, elected officials vote in a matter shall not be grounds for a recall, because I think we do want people to have confidence in their vote, and the public can decide, how they want to handle that vote at the next election. I do like the boundaries there. I think similar to the other comments, I do get nervous when there are clauses like lack of fitness, because it doesn't say who's the judge. It doesn't say, kind of what qualifies. And so it's sort of like these, wild card statements that people can use to apply to a bunch of different things. And so, that makes me a little concerned. And similarly, I think, the 50 days absence, there are reasons, maybe a legitimate reason, a health reason or something other, where someone is out for, the first 5 of their first 10 meetings. We all know about it and everyone's okay with it, but now we have to do something about it. So I think I also like the idea of us just giving it a little more thought and make sure we really have, I like the idea of boundaries, but let's make sure that there isn't the option, there isn't the possibility of kind of leveraging some of the language in a way that it's not intended. That's my thought. So we do have a motion on the board to approve as amended. We've had discussion. Do we have a second? So I'll move to a voice vote. All those in favor of accepting the amended language, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Nay.
No.
Okay, I think we have 2 nays and 6 in favor, so the motion passes. I do like the idea of maybe doing a little bit more work on it, if that's okay. So I would accept the motion to send this to Rules and Procedures.
Motion made. Yep.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we can move to a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We return it to Rules and Procedures. Thank you for bringing the motion forward. Okay. We are at item E, proposed ordinance D FY 22-010, Bridgewater Town Charter, Article 4, City Manager, Term of Office. This was also introduced by Councilor Gallagher and George. You can find it on page 31 of your packet. The amended language came back on page 32.
Right. Yep, this was something that the Charter Review Committee brought forward. Councilor George and I sponsored it to bring it forth for discussion. Obviously, we don't have a city manager. We have a town manager. I don't even support it, but it's I don't support a term on a town manager. That's what we determine the term. So, but that's what was brought forth by the Charter Review, and I think was worth a discussion amongst us. But it should say town manager, and the point of this is to appoint a town manager to a maximum of a 5-year renewable term. That doesn't mean we can't do 5, 5, 5, and 5, but go on forever. But
yeah, I do know a little bit about the discussion that happened in Rules and Procedures on this one. I think there was some concern of by charter setting that term because we thought it would take away the ability for the council to set it as part of a negotiation. And so, but I think the rules and procedures at the time also thought it might be a good opportunity to just further clarify the qualifications for the office. And so there was some language in there about that.
Mr. President, through you to the town attorney, point of information. Legally, town manager's contract can't be more than 5 years, correct?
Right.
Okay. So if there was any concern about taking out the 5 years because the town manager's contract could be longer, we can't do that
It's
for
already
long.
covered.
That's right.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Okay, I would entertain a motion to accept the amended language.
So moved.
Second.
Second for discussion. Any discussion? I would just add, although I did work on it, I'm also not sure this is needed. So while I think it does sort of clarify our expectations, I'm not sure that this is a critical add for our charter.
I mean, some of the language that's highlighted here, it alludes to part of what we do in an evaluation, which we're in the middle of. It's kind of.
And for that reason, it's beneficial, you think?
Oh, no, I don't think it's redundant. Like you say, it's redundant. We already have something like this in place through the evaluation process. Obviously, qualifications. I mean, obviously, it's a big position, and we really do want the best that's out there, and experience is important. I mean, I don't think we would never not look for that. You know what I mean? It's like, we don't need to be told that, but
Yeah.
Question, Mr. President. Is this replacing existing language or are we creating new language here?
It replaces the existing paragraph.
Of the 4-1.
Yeah.
Section
At
4-1.
least that's how it's written. I guess it's probably additive to that.
Again, if it's slightly redundant, it just, reinforces what we might have listed in other areas, but if it gives more clarity than what we had pre-existingly, which is, I believe, what's been crossed out, I think it's not a bad thing.
I think it's good. I think maybe just the other comment is, if the council, the town manager is an employee of the council, and the town manager's essentially, the town council is essentially an employee of the community. So I think depending on where the community is at, the community might have different criteria for what makes a good town councilor. And over time, they can change. They can decide 1 year we need to be great administrators. The next year we need to be great community builders. You can kind of change it based on the needs. I feel like it's the same thing for the town manager. I think, I like the idea of us maybe having a little bit of flexibility to decide at any given point in time what makes a good town manager, and we can do that as part of the
It
negotiation
says it must serve
process.
at the will of the council, so that's basically.
and there
the
is,
same-
I mean,
same-
part of the language in here is in his contract. There's the last 4 sentences is already language in his contract.
Okay, we have the amended language in front of us. Any additional discussion before we vote on it? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the amended language, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay.
I have to do a roll call.
Roll call.
Can we do a roll call on that?
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
No,
Mr. Moore,
No.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
No.
and Mr. Lindy.
No.
4, so it's 4 yes, 1, 2,
Fails.
3, and 4 no.
Split down the middle.
So it
Four
does
to
not
four.
pass. Fails.
It did not pass.
Okay. So that reverts back to the original language, which is on the first one. And I would entertain, so I think take two paths with this. We can send it back to rules and procedures, or we could attempt to move this forward to advertising as is.
I'd make a motion that we do not adopt this ordinance.
So that we would essentially vote to approve, and then that would not be a passing vote, right? How do we,
Yeah, well,
how do I legally do that?
then if that's your vote, I would vote to table it. I would make a motion to table it.
Well, motion to table this.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Okay. Let's do a roll call vote on the motion to table in its original language.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. George,
No.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
and Mr. Chase.
Yes.
So that's 7 in favor, 1 opposed.
Thank you. All right. That completes legislation for action.
Wow. Take a 5-minute recess.
We have acted. I would remind the council that there were other recommendations put forward. If anybody would like to sponsor those, encourage you to do that. Okay, the next item is M, old business. We have none. N, new business. Ordinance D, FY 24-001. Ordinance to change the elected town clerk position to an appointed town clerk position in Bridgewater's home rule charter. I will defer to Dr. Perry for an introduction.
Thank you. Like I said, I feel like I need a 5-minute recess after all that other stuff, though. Obviously, like I said, this a lot of people came out to hear this tonight. I'm bringing this forward for a variety of different reasons. I mean, we definitely have heard from the Charter Review Committee that their research tends to show that, people want to keep it elected. Personally, I've talked to some people around town. I've talked to people I cross paths with in my office. And I tend to find that many long-term residents in town like to keep it elected. Many new residents in town might like to see it appointed. So we brought this forward, in my personal opinion, and certainly in retrospect of what I've seen in the town over the years. We've been very, very fortunate for the people that we've elected to the position to do a very good job with the position. Ronnie Adams did a wonderful job over the years, faced many elections, contested elections, and always seemed to win his elections. Marilee, again, has done a wonderful job as an elected town clerk as well. Her elections have been uncontested, except for a few write-ins, but she has, come out on top as well. And again, we've been very fortunate to get good qualified people through our electorate process to do the job. But as this town has grown and the type of government that we've moved forward with, I feel that the town would be better served going forward if we had an appointed position for the town clerk, just to ensure that we've got the right candidate with the right background and the right training behind them. So this is basically what's been written out in this ordinance. What I would definitely say, and certainly based on what was said earlier, and some questions that were posed earlier in the night, when it comes to, can a town clerk be fired? Again, if it's an appointed position, someone's not doing the job, then they're not going to be in their position very long, because the town manager would be in charge of that person, whether they're there or not. If it's an elected position, as we've just discussed, it's a recall election, and it might take some time to get done. I've seen some candidates in the past elections that I've seen. I've been quite concerned if they were elected, if they were in that position. So again, I just think going forward that the town would be better served to have an appointed town clerk. And again, I leave that to the voters. I put it out there to see if we put that out there. If the town wants to go for that, if the town does not, then by all means, we will continue with an elected process. But based on the direction that we're going in as a town with our form of government, I just feel that we'd be better served with an appointed town clerk going forward. I think that's about it I have on the introduction of it all. But again, it's all in the language of the ordinance, and I open it up for any further discussion from the council.
So I would entertain a motion to refer to rules and procedures and then a second for discussion. So we have a motion to refer to rules and procedures.
I'll second it.
Did we have an original motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought someone made an original motion.
Oh, sorry, a motion. and a
I want to
second.
make a
Okay.
motion to table this. I'll second that.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion to table and a second for discussion.
Are we discussing the motion to table, or are we discussing the issue?
I think
What was the first motion?
so. We
table.
actually didn't get.
I thought he mentioned that someone had
I
made the motion.
Yeah,
to- and I
said,
seconded.
is there a motion to refer to rules and procedures? We did not get a full motion, a second on that.
I would have made the initial motion on that if it was stated correctly.
So was there a second on the motion to send to rules and procedures?
I did not hear a second on the motion to.
I-
refer.
Okay,
Well,
and then
I-
the so then that doesn't have to be voted. And then the next motion that was seconded was a motion to table?
Yeah, so I said I would entertain a motion to refer to rules and procedures.
Yeah,
Well, again, I made a second, but that would have been an initial
Yeah.
if I
Okay.
thought you had said that there
So
was an
let's-
initial
Let's
motion.
start with that. We have a motion to.
And I'll make
refer
the
to-
initial motion.
We have an initial motion to refer to rules and procedures. Do we have a second for that? Do not have a second.
Okay.
And then we did have a motion to table, and we had a second to the motion to table. And that opens it up for discussion. We have any discussion?
so we're on the motion to table.
The motion to table.
Yep, discussion on the motion to table.
Right.
Yep,
Not the issue itself, right?
right, just the motion to table.
Any discussion on the motion to table?
I just think this needs to stay elected. Like many others have said, there's too many out-of-town people in charge around here, and it's kind of good to keep at least a few spots in town. Yeah, you might not always get the best quality candidate, but Marley, she stuck around, she climbed the ranks, she started part-time, she became full-time. I imagine the next person probably could too.
Councilor Lindy?
I don't want my electoral rights to be taken away. I watched in another community where they had a clerk elected, and it was a no bid posting, and a counselor moved into that job. I don't want to see it happen here. I want to make it independent and elected.
Councilor Gallagher?
I support tabling this as well. I mean, again, this was voted down by the voters in 2009. There have been 2 charter reviews that have been done since this charter has been in place. Current charter review committee that looked at this, did a survey, and the survey was overwhelmingly not to change it. And I do think that some of the members of that charter review went in there thinking this would be something they would want to propose. But after they dug into it, looked into it, they came out and said, no, there is a reason to have it stay elected. Even the town clerk tonight said that this is an important position that needs to be elected. The town clerk is the first person people see when they walk into the town hall. We don't elect much in this town anymore. This is certainly would really, I think, take away from the activism that we have if this were to change. And there really isn't a need to change this to appointed. So I support having this tabled.
Any additional
Shelved, what do you
discussion?
want to call it?
Yeah. Councilor Chase?
Thank you, Mr. President. Together with Councilor Gallagher, I agree. I have always been supportive of the notion of an elected town clerk. And I provided testimony to that effect to the Charter Review Committee. I was pleased to see that the outcome from the Charter Review Committee was, in fact, to recommend that we continue to elect a town clerk. The very comment you made, Councilor Gallagher, with respect to the public, the town clerk's office is the most public-facing office in the town. And residents of the town, including entirely newcomers, completely new residents who have questions about town government, that is where they're going to go. And for that reason, I think that an elected town clerk, a town resident, serves our town very well in that respect. And I do compliment Councilor Perry, because I think that there are arguments to be made for the appointment of a town clerk. However, I have always felt in this town that it was more important that the town have the opportunity to elect the town clerk, because it's such a public facing office. And yes, we have been blessed with, I think, exceptionally, well served by the persons who have served in that role. And obviously, I would hope that that would continue in the future. But our own town clerk tonight has, and I agree with her, she's expressed complete confidence in the long-term employees of that office. And I know as well personally that they are in fact a very professional team, and we've come to rely on them, as the town clerk has herself come to rely upon them. So that's my, I do think that we should at this time table it.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? If I could just add my comments too. I do appreciate the fact that this is brought forward. I've also talked to residents who are interested in this. And I think the reasoning I usually hear is that this specific position is trusted with the integrity of our election process, right? Among many other things, administrative as well. And so I think there was, just kind of concern about the risk there. So I can definitely appreciate the idea, and there are many other benefits to it as well. I think for me, I think one of the things that is indicative of a healthy democracy is that you do sort of have people in and out of positions based on what the community is interested in. And I think this position has always been a great partner to the council, but also sort of a healthy, challenges us in some areas, challenges the town manager in some areas. And I think, that sort of three-legged stool of a town manager, a town council, and a town clerk, I think creates healthy dialogue and kind of forces us into some discussions that are beneficial to the town. So, for that reason, I do like the idea of the elected official for now. Okay, any additional? Okay, we have a motion on the table motion to table. We have a second to that motion. Why don't we do a roll call vote for this one if we could?
Sure. Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
No.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
and Mr. Chase.
Yes.
It's 7 in favor, 1 opposed.
Moving on to item O, citizen comments. Would anyone from the public like to speak? I'm going to try my timer again. I would ask you to stick to the 3 minutes if I could get.
I need to see the timer. though.
I know,
How
it's,
much time I have.
When I ordered it online, it was this big. Put up as a thimble.
I wanna hear the alarm.
Ed Ivaldi, Boxwood Lane. I just want to make a couple of comments on some things that have already occurred tonight. The gentleman who was here earlier who talked about the fact that, it's not easy for citizens to get information. It takes some effort to do that. And I was thinking, as the town manager was going through his report, all those items seem to be things that you could put right on the front page of the town website. So that if somebody went there, that right on the page, they could click on roadway plan, and they would see a summary of what the roadway plan is and all of those things. So that might be something the town manager's team might want to consider. Also, I know there's a town Facebook page as far as scheduling some of these meetings, particularly the downtown revitalization meetings. If they're posted on the Facebook page for the town, whoever's doing that might want to share it on Bridgewater Residents and Bridgewater 02324, because it gets a much wider exposure if that happens. So, just some comments there. On the town manager review, having conducted reviews throughout my whole career with different levels of employees, performance reviews have to be linked to objectives. So I didn't have a chance to look through it, but you need a good set of solid objectives to begin with. And then you base that performance review on those objectives. So make sure that as you're doing that, there's something tied to that. And that has to address what was accomplished and how they were accomplished. That has to weigh into the whole discussion. And then the other thing on a review really has to do with potential and skills. Like, how does the person rate with leadership, communication, problem solving, all those things. So there's two pieces, there's performance and there's potential. The ordinance that has to do with term limits, the 007, you left that anything less than 24 months, a term served less than 24 months doesn't count. Well, if somebody chooses to move from one district to another district, that's a choice they're making. And we want to make sure that we're not creating a loophole so that somebody can, keep moving from district to district to district and therefore extending their term, just like we had a loophole in the consecutive years. So please look at that and make sure it's, we haven't created a loophole. On the stipend, so it shouldn't include benefits, and I didn't have a chance to read through it. So if there's specific language in there that says salary, but not to include any sort of benefits, that needs to be in there. And Councilor George, you've already made up your mind. And so I guess the question is, can we assume that you've made up your mind because you've actually talked to all your constituents and they...
Mr. President, point of order.
Yeah, so we can't address the counselors directly.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's not a personal view versus a public view. That's all. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate what I consider your personal support, and I do appreciate your very kind words, Dr. Perry. I had a couple of things I wanted to say that this one doesn't concern anything that happened here tonight. There is a new nonprofit in town called Reimagining Community. I don't know if you've read about it in the Buzz, but I was very excited to meet their one of the leaders of this new nonprofit, and that's Tommy Hogan. And one of the things he's done is started a new community center over at what used to be the Cole Parish Center, back behind the Gammons Methodist Church. And it is fantastic, and you should go see it. And it's designed specifically for the kids when they get out of school to keep walking and come on down here and go over there. There'll be a snack bar. There'll be instruments for them to play. There'll be places for them to write and things for them to do. And he's done a beautiful job restoring that old building. So I highly recommend you go and take a look at it and meet Tommy Hogan, who is also, he and his wife have done the Boundless Bean. Yeah, I have a hard time remembering which B starts there. The Boundless Bean, which is the new little coffee shop over there. I don't know if we're supposed to advertise in council meetings, but I'm just pointing that out to you around town. And then I would like to respectfully ask if you would put me on your next agenda to please come and speak to you about the election next April, when we're going to have someone running for town clerk. And I have some ideas that I'd like to talk to the council about, because I really do think all of us, I will include myself in that as an elected official, we are the ones who are responsible for trying to churn up the vote and get the voters to turn out. And I think this is a specifically difficult time to do that. And I think even our entire country is staggering under the weight of that burden. So I'd like to come and share some of that weight on all of your shoulders at your next meeting. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public?
Hi, Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street. I just want to comment, well, thank you for tabling the clerk thing, sorry, but I'm on the revitalization. I get the newsletters, emails, and my comment is that it's the same every time. I keep expecting maybe there's a little more information. There's never any new information. So I get to the point where I'm kind of ignoring them. I am planning on attending the September 26th thing. I did go to the one at the library 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was a good discussion. It was a small group, but I have to make the comment that if we don't agree with, agree might not be the right word, but if we don't agree with Bob Ruley on certain things, he hears you, but I definitely strongly get the impression it doesn't matter. It's going to be, and I don't want to really say it, it's going to be his way regardless of what we
Could we
say.
try to keep the comments just generic versus
Okay.
a specific target?
Well, I'm trying to, on the revitalization, sorry, well, he's part of it, so I didn't know. But the comments, I don't feel like it's necessarily being listened to. They're telling us what they want, but I still don't feel like it's being what we want. And, but he did reassure me or us that the common won't be changed. He said that it's going to stay the common, it's not going to be moved or anything. That was good. But the newsletters need to be maybe a little better. And as far as on the old town hall, you talked about the records and everything. I hope somebody's paying close attention to all the records that are in there and the historic stuff. I don't want them to get lost. I think there was a comment on the War Memorial that some of the stuff got lost. So hopefully that's being watched over closely. And I always felt like the town hall should become a town museum, and that's where you can go to look at all the historic things that we have. It's a big building. It can store all the stuff and not be stuck in a basement somewhere. And email notifications seem to be better from the town as far as meetings. I will be cautiously optimistic. I actually got the notification for this meeting last week instead of at 7 o'clock tonight. So that's a plus. And I'm waiting to see what happens with the planning board meetings. I used to get those ahead, so we'll see. So that was a good thing. I got this ahead of time. And on the stipends, I do feel the stipends, if it is approved to go through to voters, it should be through the voters and not like politicians where they get to vote their own pay raise. So it should be through the voters because it's us that would do it. But I still feel, as much as I appreciate everybody, I like the fact that you don't get a stipend because you're volunteering your time and effort, and I appreciate everything. You think you get compensated for expenses? Do you get compensated for expenses? So obviously you should do that, and I thank you for keeping the word town instead of city. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Do we have anyone else from the public? Yep.
I said, welcome to September in the drag racing world. You scorched the wheels tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. George, for explaining a little bit more about the process. I hadn't gotten to the admin code process, but thank you. I think it should be right at the top of those goals. And I think you answered some of my questions. I also want to note, for the record, I did published a report on the townhouse, its cultural uses from its inception until the last time I could get to a town report, 2008. During that process, I found that the common was deeded to the town in the late 1700s, I believe. So the common is under deeds. And those deeds say it will be always forever in perpetuity, or whatever that word is, a common. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments from the public?
Frank Souza, Main Street. As a young man, I go up to the senior center frequently, and they all seem to agree with me that often as we're trying to watch these meetings on computers at home, different members, as they're speaking, they're either sitting too far back or they're facing away from the mics, and we can't hear what they're saying. And it just makes it very confusing for us because we hear half of what you're saying and half of what he's saying, vice versa, not pointing to individual, and the meetings just like that. And then I told him I would come in here and address it with you and ask all the council members and people to my right, when they're speaking, to speak into your mic so we can hear. And even this evening, with my 2 brand new hearing aids that the Veterans VA gave me today, I was having a little problem here. And I saw a couple of other people, one going like this and one going like that. So please, in the future, speak right into the mic, raise your voice. Remember, we're home. You may not see 100 people here, but you don't know how many of them are sitting at home listening to you. And a number of them up there asked me, and I said, I'll go talk and we'll see. So please, in the future, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no one else from the public, I think we can close the citizen comments and move on to item P on the agenda, council comments. We'll start with Councilor Lindy.
Oh, you got me first this time. I love it. Excellent meeting, good discussion, good points. I'm glad we sent some stuff back to get more clarification for rules and procedures. And very glad we, no offense to anybody, but I'm very glad we're keeping the town clerk issue on the table, because I think it's really, truly important. It needs to be independent, and it needs to, it's your first, that's the first person I met when I came into town, when I came here. I am very happy to see the town common today with the posts going in and all of that, because I do feel bad for Lisa Bazell Curley, who put up all the beautiful ribbons for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and then they were all gone, but she'll put them back. She said it wasn't a big deal, but it's a treasure and we got to preserve it. Students are back in town. Traffic is back again. I think those meetings are important, and I hope people will actually come out. I get people contacting me that are saying they're not going to listen to what we have to say. Well, I disagree with that. I think I've been to most of the meetings so far. I just missed one on my anniversary. Sorry about that. But I think people want to be heard, want to be listened to. And again, those are the people that elect us. The businesses in the community help pay the taxes. We should listen to them as well, because they're going to, they pay same tax rate, but it's important that we help their businesses grow and succeed and thrive. So that's all I have for tonight.
Councilor McKinnon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say happy summer to everyone. It's just about over, and hope you're all looking forward to some more events next year at the Town River Landing. Al and the folks over at Fire for Effect definitely have some plans for next season, so hopefully soon we'll be able to share those. That's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to mix it up. We're going to go random order a little bit tonight. Councilor Chase. How about I put you next?
Redirect.
I'm following the list.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I would just like to make one rather obvious comment. The fact is that schools are back in session, and I was doing more driving throughout the town this afternoon than I customarily do. And unfortunately, it was during the school release hours, and so I probably encountered most of the school bus drivers in town. But just so that we all should be particularly aware of more children on the street, people, changing their habits and their attitudes and adjusting to, new things like back to school. And soon enough, I hate to say it, but we'll be adjusting to the loss of daylight savings time. But just to be a little more cautious, particularly on the road. And I think that would serve everyone very well. That's all.
Great. Thank you. Councilor George.
No comments tonight, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you. Councilor Perry.
Oh, okay, we're coming back this way. All right. So to start, I just want to thank people we appointed earlier tonight, Gloria Lemieux and Sherry Sprung, for their volunteerism, and I wish them luck in their appointments. To echo what Councilor Chase said, I want to welcome all students back from kindergarten all the way up to BSU. It's going to get busy this week, especially tomorrow. I think classes are resuming at BSU tomorrow, so get ready for some backup traffic wise. And just to go back to touching base on the
the clerk situation. Again, I brought it forth and between town residents and fellow members of the council, the voices have been heard. I just hope again that, again, after Marilee finishes her term, and again, I thank her very much for a job well done. That we do get some qualified volunteers in town to step on up and put the name on a ballot, just like we have a tough time finding people to run for council and library trustees. Sometimes, I hope we get some people who want to step up and be the town clerk. It's an important role, as everyone said. It's the face of the town. And I hope we get a good candidate and are as lucky as we were to have our prior two. Just like the Patriots have had some longstanding coach in place, we've had some longstanding town clerks in place. So we hopefully we'll see somebody just as worthy and helpful and right for the position going forward for the town of Bridgewater. And again, I appreciate the healthy debate and the discussion that we did across the board here tonight, not only on that issue, but all the different legislation we had in front of us tonight. That's just how the council works. And I think the form of government and the way we do things here in the town of Bridgewater works well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. Councilor Gallagher.
I've got nothing tonight.
All right. How much time do we
Dennis
have?
first, I think.
Just to 10. I'm going to try to
How
drag it
about
out.
9
Councilor
minutes.
Murphy.
Yeah, I just have one thing. Councilor Robinson and I had a chance to go visit the old Bridge Center and meet with the Easter sales team. They're doing some incredible work down there at the new property. Put in over $1 million, they told us, to the current property down there and renovating it, bringing it up to date. So just wanted to make sure I made that point tonight. And they have some great resources on their website. Encourage you all to check it out. If you haven't had a chance to check out the property, also do so as well too. I didn't have a chance to check it out before they purchased it, but they described it to me and it sounded like they did a lot of work down there, and they intend to have a lot of incoming programs over the course of the next year with a lot of people coming on site there. So something to look forward to. It was just good news to hear.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Murphy. So I'll wrap us up. Just 2 quick notes. As others have said, the school is starting. It's also an exciting opportunity for the new superintendent Powers to sort of shape the education system for us. So I'm really excited. Just so people know, he did reach out to connect with me as town council president. He's got some great ideas for the school, and I'm really excited for him, and I wish him luck. I think he's going to be great pulling the school system ahead as a great partner to us. Also appreciated the comments about communication. Communication remains one of the most challenging things for us. We've tried a bunch of different things. We've tried videos, we've tried coffee with the counselors, we've tried Facebook, and you always sort of get just enough participation, but you don't tend to sort of hit the full community with it. And so I really appreciate the comments. I would also say, though, as members of the community, if you could help us by just recognizing that it is challenging for us to get the word out. And so if you can be an active participant in the community and help us find better ways to get it to you, that would be appreciated. It is something we're trying to fix. We haven't figured out how yet. And then lastly, I'm excited about the meeting to talk about downtown revitalization. As others have said, we are excited about the process. So you might see some of that passion come through in the conversation, but we are also very interested in making sure that the community is excited about what we're proposing and sharing your ideas and helping to be part of shaping it. Because, the reality is, we've all walked through the downtown. I think all of us know that change is needed. And if it's not this, feel free to bring forth other ideas, but something needs to happen. It is time for us to fix that. And so just your engagement is appreciated in helping us solve that problem. I think that's it. We have no executive session tonight, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.